Hi, everyone on YouTube. We are just getting started a little late due to some technical difficulties, but we will get started in a moment. Okay, we're back. Great, thank you. Let's see. I will. Then I'll have Councilman Zalewski lead us in the pledge.
Oh, great. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great.
See, my flag was replaced with a very big flag.
Figure we could show some of our beautiful waterfront.
Yes.
Very good. Let's see. We'll start with a roll call. Councilman Gully.
I am here.
Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Present.
Councilmember Steele.
Present.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Sorry. Yep. And then Council Chair Anasha Cummings. I am here as well. We also have present Council President ex officio Carmela Mantello, as well as the council member from District 5, Ken Zalewski, who is not a member of the committee, but has joined us nonetheless. So thanks for being here.
And wreaked havoc.
Great. Let's see. And then from the administration, I see it's a little hard to tell in the room, but we certainly have Deputy Mayor Monica Krajewski, Commissioner Chuck Wojcik, as well as let's see, your masks are hiding you. We've got the mayor back in the back with Andy. And then Josh Buell over there. Okay, hi, thanks for being with us. And
Greg Tudor.
yes, Greg Tudor. That's right. Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Let's see. And we will start with the golf course since y'all have joined us in person. So I wanted to start at, let's see. Do you have any sort of formal presentation you want to give, or should we just start with the golf course in order?
So we can do the golf course in order, and then Aaron is hanging out. He also is doing dual roles tonight. He's got planning commission as well. So we'll go ahead with golf course. We'll go through the budget itself, and then I know you might have some questions in regards to the planned improvements that we presented, and then we can go through there. There's not really a lot of changes to the specific budget, but what we can also do is have Josh and Greg talk about perhaps some of the changes that we've seen due to COVID and what might carry over and into next year, and what those changes might mean. Just a simple, summary, kind of introductory kind of thing, and then we'll jump into the budget and then go through the course. Does that sound good?
Yeah, just so I know in terms of timing, are there any on the planning commission for Aaron that I should be aware of?
I don't think so. I think we should be all right. He's in the engineering office, so if I need to run over there, I can run over there too. Okay.
That will be fine.
All right, so Greg and Josh, why don't you guys just kind of do a very brief kind of recollection of the year, things you saw, things you expect to carry through, things are positive and or negative.
So I think the biggest thing is adjusting on the fly this year. We got thrown a lot of curveballs like everybody else, obviously. We opened a month later than we wanted to. We opened in May, as opposed to April 1st. We opened May 1st. We also didn't have golf carts until the end of May, first week of June, due to the COVID outbreak. So carts weren't allowed at first, then carts were allowed, one person per cart. So carts became available in June. Tee times were spread out longer than they've ever been spread out before, which had its positives and negatives. Positives were the pace of play was much better at the golf course, which golfers do enjoy. The negatives to the tee times being spaced out, it obviously is a loss of revenue because you can't have as many people on the course as you would like during a regular day. So how it broke down was, in years past, we did 8-minute tee times. That's every 8 minutes you send out a group of 4. This year we did every 12 minutes, so it's losing about 3 groups an hour per day. We also lessened the hours we were open. We were open at 8 a.m. and closing at 5 p.m. as opposed to open at 7 and closing around the same time. That was really in conjunction with many more people using the park as a park space, so we thought it was the right thing to do to have the neighborhood, because they were outside more, be able to use the golf course area as a walking area and more of a park during off hours, so we kept those hours similar. The other thing that the outbreak did was it canceled all of our leagues and tournaments for the season. So we did not host any leagues, we did not host any large gatherings, any large shotgun tournaments, what they call it, which is everybody starting at the same time, everybody gathering together. In the past, we've had at least tournaments every Saturday, and then we would have some during the week. We did do away with those. That also brought positives and negatives, obviously. The positive are many more people saw our course this year that have never seen it before. So it was a great promotion tool for people to come see it that haven't seen it before, that normally wouldn't be able to get on the course. They were able to this year at different parts of the day that they were never, excuse me, able to see in the past. So that was the positive. Obviously, the negative to that is leagues and tournaments are guaranteed money that we have, and if the weather's bad, they're going to still come because they've already paid their money and they're going to play. So that is an adjustment as well. So those were the major changes, but I think it also helps streamline our process of how we run the golf course. We did it with a much smaller staff than we ever had before. So we learned how to adjust on the fly. We went from, on my end, last year I had 22 people working on my staff. This year I had 5 people working on my staff. So it was a dramatic cut, and I think we did very well. I think the public would agree with that assessment. There were very few issues in terms of a daily running of the course with less of a staff. So we have, had a savings there, and that is reflected in the 2021 budget with a reduction in the temporary salaries. So that was the main. It was a challenging year. We took 1 person per cart all year. Some courses went to 2 people per cart. I didn't think that was the prudent thing to do. I didn't think it was the safe thing to do. We did offer people a personal choice if they wanted to ride together. We did offer that if people were comfortable doing it. But for the most part, we kept 1 person per cart because I think it was the right thing to do. There were other courses in the area that experienced COVID cases and outbreaks of it from large tournaments and things like that. I'm happy to say that we've gotten through 95% of the year and we haven't had a COVID case. So I do take pride in that as well.
Greg, do you want to talk a little bit about any of the challenges you saw this year in regards to weather or the course itself?
It was a very successful year. I thought the staff did a wonderful job. We were able to bring back, there was only 1 new member this year. The rest were coming back from the year before, so we had some nice continuity. The weather was very favorable this year, which helped with the back 9 and these drainage issues that we chronically have. So we weren't, we didn't have to deal with that, which was positive. Like Josh said, we're very proud that our staff worked right through. We never, we were never off at all. We worked right through from March all the way till today without any restrictions or layoffs. So very proud that we were able to work through the whole process and stay healthy.
So just a kind of an overview, and what we can do is we'll just go through the budget lines if you'd like. And then from that point, if you have any more questions, and I will say I apologize because I actually thought I hit send earlier on the email I sent you about a half an hour. I had a 2 o'clock call and a 3 o'clock call and a 4 o'clock. I actually thought I sent it to you by 2 o'clock, but I realized that I had not. So in your email, you'll see the plan for the course. I think that's the same one that you saw last year. And then you will have a PDF of the spreadsheet that goes hole by hole. What we're going to focus on is when we have conversation and questions after the budget stuff for the $750,000 or $725,000 is the highlighted areas are the areas that are included in that, along with some soft costs. So I just wanted to make sure you had a copy of it. It is the full phased plan. That is the whole thing, but the yellow areas are the areas that we will be specifically talking about when you have questions. So really, when you go down through the budget itself, there really wasn't a lot of change. You'll see there's not really any 101 salary changes. You'll do see the reduction in temporary staffing in 102, as Josh talked about. That was a reduction that he thought he was able to do based on his experience this year and knowing how they can efficiently operate. The clothing allowance and longevity is contractual. Pretty much really everything else is really staying the same all the way through. So it's a really good, oh, and the rentals and the equipment, I will tell you that since Andy started the separate account, we talked about it the other night with the fire department for the installment agreements, the debt installment payments, those, you'll see the reduction in the rentals and the equipment in the 405 line. That is because that equipment purchase that we did 2 years ago, that installment debt is now in that other account. Okay, so that's the reason for the decrease in that account. It's just in that other account. And then really, other than that, it's kind of status quo all the way through.
So just to clarify, permanent salaries are staying the same. What is the actual number drop on the temporary salaries?
50,000
Sorry, in terms of people?
in people. You went from 22
In
to...
terms of people, so I went from 22 to, Greg had his usual staff, with the exception of one person on his staff. I went from 22 to 5 temporary help along with myself. I'm the only full-time person in the pro shop area. So I went to 5 this year, and next year I expect to go to 10. So we'd go from 22, it went to 5 this year, and then it'll be 10 next year on my end.
So there'll be 10 in the pro shop, and then how many out on the grounds?
So it will be 11 on the grounds.
11 on the ground.
Temporary.
And is that a change, or is that it has been 11 and it remains 11?
That's the same.
So it's just the pro shop that's dropping by 12 basically from previous budgets.
Yes.
So a lot of that changed this year with COVID restrictions on how many people could actually be in the pro shop. That's why we did the online or phone call tea times, and they had to pay by credit card. There was no cash transaction, so that a lot of that was the reduction in the amount of people in the pro shop as well.
And how did that work operationally? What percent were most people comfortable using the online system?
Yeah, so we use mostly, and this is something me and Andy have talked about for next year, is we've never taken payments online for the golf course because it's a different payment processing plan of going through a third-party system. So it's something me and Andy are talking about right now. So people would call me on the phone like you would do at a restaurant. You'd give me your phone number. I'd ring it through our credit card system. You would do it that way. It could get overwhelming with the phone calls at times during our busiest times because we have one phone line and I was there answering the phones every day. But, you know, people grew to know to just call back and I would take care of them. And I think people enjoyed it, to be honest with you, because they didn't have to come in to an inside place. So they were always outside. There was no worry about coming in and, you know, having to be inside with anybody. They would pay me over the phone and they'd pick their card up outside without having to see anybody. And of course, we sanitize the carts before and after every use as well. So I think people were happy with the way it went.
Maybe talk about them driving the car.
So where are you with that online system? I know that you have a site that you've been sort of working with, but where do we stand with that? What is it going to take to get that to the point where it?
So if we're going to use, I didn't use the online booking software this year because it was just me inside. So it was easier for me to keep everything streamlined myself just by the telephone. That's why I didn't use the online booking agent. The online booking agent will be up when we open next year for everybody to use. You can go on, you can see what tee times are available to book it. And the next thing we're working on is so people can pay for their tee times online. So they would just put their credit card information. Is that something that we're researching right now with hopes of having it ready for the 21 season?
So I apologize. I thought we were going to buy online.
So as is right now, people book online, but then you call them for payment, essentially?
Right. Yep.
There will be, great, but then certainly, is nothing we need to put in the budget to enable the credit card processing? Is that correct, Andy? That's just the process?
Online payments, it's something that we're gonna have to see what the residual cost could be from implementing a system like that. And it's part of the evaluation that Josh and I are looking at.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to get clear on the numbers. Related to the tea times in 2020 versus normal times. How many tea times per day do you have now versus normal?
So we lost 3 tea times per hour because of the COVID restrictions of keeping people socially distant and not having one of the groups to bunch up as they're on the course. So normally I would do them every 8 minutes per hour. I did them every 12 minutes per hour. So it was a loss of 3 times per hour per day.
Okay. And is that, you planning to extend that into the 21 season? Well, I guess it'll depend.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that we're at some sort of normalcy for the beginning of next year. And none of us know that, but if it was back to somewhat normal time, I would hope to go back to every 8 minutes.
So one of the things that we talked about when Andy did the budget overview was that we had proposed some increases in the fees, and we'll talk about that as well too, if you want to go into that. And Josh can go through those if you want for the revenue.
Well, unless anyone else has any questions on the lines.
Chair?
Yes, Council President.
Chair?
Can you hear me? Yeah, was that?
Oh, my internet conked out for 2 minutes.
That's right. Go ahead.
Do you plan, and I couldn't hear, to talk about the fees because I did see.
Yeah, we're going to go to revenue after this, but we're just
Okay, good.
making sure everybody has questions on expenditures.
Okay, yeah, my internet conked out. I know 110, they're going up about 110K.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing else on expenditures? So we're going to go to revenues, and then we'll go to the capital plan. So yeah, on the revenues, certainly we're seeing a significant increase. I wanted to know, yeah, how much of that is attributable to the change in fees, and how much of that is due to potentially increased use.
So I think it's both obviously. The anticipated fees will help in that. So the anticipated fees would be a $150 raise of the season pass fees across the board. While I know that does sound like a lot, just for comparison's sake, it still drops us almost $400 to $500 below every other course, other municipal courses. Schenectady Muni charges between $1,200 and $1,500. This would put us between $800 and $1,200. So we're still below, the other municipal courses in that fee increase for the season passes. I do expect us to sell many more passes next year, even with the increases from the talk that I've had from people that, never played our course before. And I've had groups coming from Amsterdam, Niskayuna, Saratoga that play every Saturday now that are coming and playing our course. They're members of Saratoga National, Saratoga Lake Golf Club, pretty prestigious places, and they want to become members at the course next year. So I do anticipate an increase in season pass sales, and the fees would be going up $150, but still puts us lower than any other course, but it also makes us more competitive with those courses as well, which is, I think, is a place we have to get to. The daily fees are going up an average of $4 for 18 holes. That's with the cart. So $4 for 18 holes if you're a non-resident, $4 if you're a senior non-resident, and then $2 if you're a resident. So the residents still do get a very good break for playing at the golf course. It's going to be $8 cheaper for them than it would be for a non-resident to come play. I think that the other aspect that we're looking at is the leagues, bringing the leagues back next year. I think it's going to be a hybrid system because we've learned, what may work, what doesn't work. Modernizing our golf course to streamline better for 2020 as opposed to what it was in 2000, 2010. So we do anticipate bringing some leagues back, but not all the leagues that we've had in years past. Because the course was used so much by the public during times when they couldn't use it in years past. We do expect to bring leagues back, especially the bigger leagues that, generate the guaranteed revenue on a daily basis. We obviously want them to come back, and we'll offer the smaller leagues to combine with some of the other smaller leagues to make a bigger league, to make it worthwhile. So that is something we're looking at as well. The other major change with the fees is that if you're in multiple leagues for your park in the past, if you had a season pass, it would pay for all your greens fees for the year. So if somebody was in 2 golf leagues and they bought a season pass, basically it took off the price of the season pass right for playing in those 2 leagues. And every other round they play would basically be just extra that they weren't paying for. So our proposal would be that it would include 1 league. So if you were in 1 league and you had a season pass, it would include that. You would not have to pay the greens fees for that 1 league. But if you were in multiple leagues, you would have to pay us for every league thereafter the first league to try to generate revenue. Where these season pass holders, if they're buying 1 pass and joining 3 leagues, it's almost like we're giving them $300 and then they're playing golf for the rest of the year. So it's something we've definitely talked about and tried to change. I think it's good for the course. I think it doesn't penalize the season pass holder because they're still getting that 1 league. It's still a great price, and they're still going to be able to come play at other points in the year as well.
Do we have a particular breakdown of, so we're going, I guess 2019 actual was at 468,000. And then we're proposing a revenue of 610,000 for next year. Is there a calculation behind that in terms of, is that just, tell me about the difference between those two, how they're calculated, both in terms of.
So a lot of that is based on bringing the tournaments and leagues back. The other thing that is our plan is that in the past we've had tournaments on Saturdays every year, and my plan this year is to put tournaments on Monday and Friday mornings, which is what most clubs do in the area, really around the country, is if you have a golf tournament, you're playing on a Monday and Friday morning, and then the weekend is open for public play. So that is our plan, to break down to tournaments Mondays and Friday mornings. Then we're going to bring a hybrid league system back where I bring between 10 and 12 leagues back. In the past, I did have 28 leagues. 28 leagues is way too many leagues for a golf course. It oversaturates the course in a sense. It discourages public play. So this would be a system where we have leagues 2 to 3 nights a week. 2 nights a week, the course is open. This is during the week. 2 nights during the week, it's just public play where you can come and play at any time, make a tee time, come out and play. And then the weekend is open. Every tee time will always be open for the public to play. So bringing the leagues back, the tournament play back, and then as well as the increased play that we saw this year on the every 12 minutes. I sold out of most of my tee times this year with the 12 minutes thing. If I can bring them back to 8 minutes, it'll bring a tremendous revenue increase to the course just by adding, it's 38 rounds a day. If people are paying $50 a round, that's a lot of money per day that we can generate if we can get back to the 8-minute tee times.
Maybe we can follow up. I'm just looking for a spreadsheet of 2019 actual, 2020 so far, how many of each were sold and at what rate, and then what your calculation of expected is for 2021 to work into that revenue number, because it is going up quite a bit. So I just want to sort of see the work on that spreadsheet. I assume that may already exist, but if not, it should be relatively easy to put together. Is that correct?
Yeah, me and Andy put it together, so we can email that to you, because that's how it's broken down. It's broken down exactly how you just said, by category, how many rounds we sold, and then the projected sale of the rounds for next year. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have revenue-related questions before we move on to capital plan?
Chair?
Yes, Council President Mantello.
I first want to say, Jeff and Greg, you guys did a fabulous job this year and last year with the course. I was only able to get out there once, not like Mr. Gully, who frequented the course much more than me, but it really looked fabulous. And on top of COVID, challenging year, you guys did a superb job. I'm looking right now per resident, non-resident. So looking in the code, single pass, it looks like a non-resident 1,100, resident 800. What's the exact number that you plan to jump that? And you plan also, I heard you talk about the dailies, and do you plan to raise the golf cart fees also?
Yeah, so the pass-wise, so in terms of the non-resident single would be $12.50 for next year.
So $150, okay.
So that's a non-resident under the age of 60, just so to be clear on that. A non-resident senior, which is 60 and over, would be $950 is the proposal. The resident single would be $950. That's a resident in the city of Troy, pays property tax under the age of 60. And then
the pass is 25, right, for that?
For the resident card?
For the resident, don't you have to buy a $25 pass on top of that?
If you buy the season pass, you don't have to pay the $25 fee. The resident card is if you're just playing daily, then you pay $25 for the card, and then you'll get the resident rate the rest of the season.
Okay.
And then the resident senior, again, senior over the age of 60, pays property tax in the city of Troy, would be $750.
It's a $150 increase to each one.
Correct, $150 across each category.
Okay. That's a jump. That's a jump. Junior pass also $150.
So also
Right.
keep in mind, Council President, that this is still substantially lower than all of the other municipal courses in the capital region.
I get that. It's just 2 years in a row, and I'm just asking questions. Also, the dailies, did you say $4 each?
Yes, so that the $4 includes a cart increase, right? The carts are going up $1 per each category,
Okay.
and then the green fees will go up $3 for each category.
Okay. That's not bad.
The tournament rate will go up a little more because we want to charge more for the tournaments because it eats up a substantial amount of time in our schedule. In years past, a while ago, we would give the tournaments a break, which never really made much sense to me. So now if you have a tournament here, they will pay a premium in the cost, so it's going up, it would be going up $6 for the green fees for the tournament. Just because we want to, per person, correct.
Wow, okay, all right. Gotcha. And I do like how you talked about not minimizing, but kind of decreasing the tournaments on the weekend, because it's very difficult, obviously, to get out on the course on the weekend because of tournaments. So, in the leagues, I think you said 3 nights a week or 2 are you looking at?
Right now I'm looking at 3, so it'd be 3 nights of leagues. I don't know the specific nights yet. That's something I'm still working through, and I'm still talking to the league presidents. But my plan right now would be to have 3 nights of leagues and 2 nights of just public play.
How will you go about, only because I played in a league for many years. I haven't been able to lately, but how will you go about determining who is able to play and not play? Only because if you're going to decrease them, obviously, some will be able to be on the course, some not.
Right. So most of that will be based on league size, how many people you're bringing to the golf course to make it worthwhile for us to have you. I'm going to put people in touch with each other that, the women's leagues, maybe they can join up and have one women's league and have it be 60 women as opposed to 24 and 28 women, and they can play on one night. So that's my plan. Me personally, I'm in a league of 20 guys on Friday night. 20 guys really wouldn't meet my threshold of what I want in a league, so I'm in that boat. I would try to get my leagues together with maybe a different league. Jim's league is on Friday nights. Maybe we join up and we become a league as well. So that's my plan, to try to get everybody that can still play there in the league at Freer. And then if they can't, they're still welcome to come book tee times. You can book 3 tee times if they have 12 people, and they can go out every week in that way too. So if it's a night their league was on and then we don't have leagues that night, they're always welcome to come book the tee times and come play in that aspect as well.
That's how some of the leagues actually did it this year.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that you'll be meeting with them, have a meeting, and hopefully we can work it out. I just don't want to see any of the leagues, especially the Queen of Clubs. I have to give a shout out. But yeah, I just don't want to see anyone get cut. So thank you.
Chair,
Yes, Councilman Taylor.
Josh, thank you for the information tonight. Greg, thank you. I like a lot of what I'm hearing. I think it's a smart thing to combine the leagues, and I certainly would promote my league to join with yours, Josh, since you're hanging around with all my old Goombas from South Troy. I will tell you,
Oh,
on the
I
table,
got no comment.
Yeah, no comment.
I think it might be a little aggressive with the numbers, but we'll wait and see. I think there'll be a lot of kickback, but you got broad shoulders, and if you can work through that, I think that certainly the course is deserving of the money. It's a fabulous, and I thank Greg and your team and you guys. It's a fabulous place to play now. As a golfer, it's a lot better to be able to roll your putt instead of have to strike your putt. So we finally have greens we can be very proud of. So I just want to say I think overall your plans of moving the tournaments make sense. Certainly putting down on the leagues also makes sense, and I can verify there has been a lot of new people and not just a lot of new golfers, a lot of new good golfers that are coming from all areas to play our course, and we should be really proud of that, because when they're coming, they're attracted like almost addicted to the game. They're going to come every week to play our course. Thank you guys for all you did.
hey, Chair.
Is that President Mantello?
I just had a thought. Is there anything that we can do to maybe try to get more of the lower income folks to participate on the golf course? I do know that there's a couple programs that I've seen. I was up there, I want to say, I forget who did it. It wasn't this past year because of COVID. It was the year before. And it was a great program, Josh.
Yeah, we did that as part of the youth programming with the community
Please
police
just-
department.
Okay, please just don't interrupt me, please. So yeah, Josh, it was a great program. And I'm trying to think who it was, if you could refresh my memory. But yes, if we could get a couple programs for lower income folks, I think that would be great.
So the program was called Hook a Kid on Golf. It was done in conjunction. It was Frank Charlo, former Councilman McGrath was part of that, and the Troy Police Department were part of that. I did have plans personally. Frank has left the area. He retired. Former Councilman McGrath has moved to Florida as well. My plans were to do a junior program for the inner city this year. It got scrapped by COVID. I have 3 or 4 friends that are golf professionals that have offered to donate their time and to come do clinics during the week, during the summer. So that was part of the plan for this year. It did get scrapped because of the COVID plan, but they're fully on board to come back next year. They're offering their time. We don't have to pay them. They're going to come and teach. I'm going to be running the program. So that is something that we do have in the plans for 2021.
Awesome, thank you.
And in the capital plan, just so you know, we'll talk about that. In the capital plan, there is a redesigned practice area, which would be used for that junior program. It would give them much more space to do the clinic as well.
Chair,
Thank you.
Yes.
thank Greg and Josh. Really enjoyed the tour that you gave Anasha and myself. Being a non-golfer, it was very informative, and really enjoyed the feedback from the golfer. Clearly, you're doing a great job, and I love the ideas, especially I do remember you mentioning that practice tee would be an excellent learning spot for young new golfers, particularly from the inner city. So it's great, and I'm also grateful at how you're recognizing the needs of the surrounding neighborhoods who use the park for non-golf purposes, and so thank you for that as well.
Yes, that was a very very, very informative tour for us non-golfers. So thanks for showing us around.
And I learned to drive a golf cart.
We didn't crash it.
Very good. Shall we move on to the capital plan? Unless there's anything further.
Chair, what page are you on, please?
So the capital plan is on, well, let's see. It's on page 263, although I would refer you also to the two attachments that the deputy mayor sent us a couple hours ago now, which include the task list and the map. I'm going to try sharing my screen. If folks can see it, then I think that would be helpful. But if you can't, let me know and I can turn it back so we can see each other.
Chair, I was going to ask that. I had a really hard time looking at it on my iPhone. Thank you, though, Monica. I just saw it a few minutes ago.
All right. Are folks able to see my screen?
There you go.
The plan?
It's very small print.
Very cool.
But maybe we can just go sort of hole by hole here.
That's the printout of it.
Is that
No, you're fine.
so hole number one? It's the improve the drainage to the fairway for $15,000. That's what you're talking about in terms of the practice area as well. Is that correct?
That's a separate line. If you go to the end, we can hit that at the end if you'd like, but if you go to the last page,
Oh, I see.
under practice facility and other items, it's task number 4.
Understood.
So you want to go hole by hole? You want to go down the sheet that we did?
Let's go. Yeah, let's go hole by hole.
Okay.
We'll just talk about the yellow items for now, although I'll note for the public and for the other council members, obviously this is a detailed plan for many years to come of work to do with lots of future ideas and improvements. But for now, we're talking about the priority things which are highlighted in yellow.
Okay, and just to keep in mind, when we talk about drainage, we're generating a bunch of material as we go. So a lot of these materials will be moved. Like you'll see, for instance, hole number 1, improved drainage. We did a bunch of drainage this year. We're going to expand upon that drainage. We're going to take that material that will be moved to hole number 2 to expand the current tee, and then add an additional forward tee. So that's line item hole number 2, task 4 and 5, and 6. So I didn't want you to, they're all interconnected. They're two separate entities, but we want to be as efficient as we can be. So a lot of that material that's generated from digging the holes, digging the trenches, will be utilized to build the tees.
That's why those three items that are otherwise in phase C are happening now, because you'll have that material on site.
What was that? I'm sorry?
So those two items from hole 2 were originally phase C. But you're doing them now as part of phase 1 because
Correct.
the materials will be on site. That makes
Correct,
sense.
because it's close by, just the proximity to the holes, and it'll help expand hole number 2.
Does that reduce that estimated cost, do you think, or is it just sort of?
Will be additional drainage. So what we did this summer was, just to get us through this year, there was a large issue in the middle of the fairway that was in the landing area for all different levels of golfers. We couldn't mow the area, we couldn't play in the area. So we did that. We found the money to do that, just to get us through the season. So we'll expand on that with this project. So working our way through the project, we're on to hole number 2, which currently is a long par 3. Part of the emphasis of this project, along with the main emphasis, is drainage. Our biggest hurdle on the course is getting the golf courts out and being able to perform daily maintenance. So as we go through here, you'll see a common theme will be drainage, and it's considered a middle tee, but basically they're forward tees. And by doing that, we encourage the youth to come and play golf. It shortens the golf course, and it also helps with the elderly to let them continue to play into their older years. Obviously, as we get older, we can't hit the ball as far, but they still enjoy to play. So we build these forward tees so they can continue to play without getting discouraged because now they can't hit the fairway. So as you work your way through holes 1, 2, and 3, the materials generated from 1 and 2 will build the additional tee on 2 and the forward tee on number 3. Number 3 is a long par 4 with currently only having 1 tee for all different users. This will let us move the tees forward, so now people can hit down the fairway further than currently every level of golfers teeing off at the same spot.
And just to pause for a second here, we have estimated costs next to each of these.
Correct.
I just wanted to confirm the plan to have all of this work bid out to a private contractor, or is any of it considered to be done in-house?
You'll see as we went along, we've been picking away at this as we could, but this will be contracted out. Majority of this work will be done by a golf course professional company.
Okay.
It'll go out to bid like every other project.
Okay. So these estimates will change based on those bids and based on the work you've already done?
Correct. I would say these numbers are pretty close to what it'll be, but yes, we'll definitely bid it all out.
Great. All right, onward. Should we jump to hole 8, or is there anything in between you wanted to mention?
Basically, so again, the entire phase is in front of you, but the highlighted areas are what we want to emphasize on for this phase of the renovation. So we skip to hole number 8. So holes 4 through 7 won't have any work done on it in this phase.
Chair?
Yes, Council President Mantello.
Real quick, before you move forward, Greg, I did see on the side, so with hole 1, you're looking to move it east to try to get more play for the practice green, correct? And I saw a couple, I also saw you're adding, you're adding a green tea on top, or I apologize, yes, a green tea on top of it. Is that part of the phase 1 approach?
The practice area, you're talking about the new practice area?
Yeah, and also Monica sent the proposed scorecard in the corner there. It's hard to see on the screen. Yep, up there. And I did see that you're looking to change some holes, some
Yes.
good ideas on some of the red. I like a couple of the ideas, especially on 17. But saying that you're adding a green tea, what out of this is in the phase 1?
So, are you talking about on the scorecard?
Correct.
Or we're using this sheet, the sheet that Anasha has on the screen is what we're running down.
Yeah, the scorecard is separate. That's for the entirety of the project. The best way to look at this is through the description of the work, and it's in the highlighted, each line item that's highlighted in the description of work.
Okay, so the scorecard, will any of that change in the first phase or?
No. No, there'll be a few forward tees added, but the scorecard itself won't change.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say that some of the yardages will change obviously when we build the tees, but the overall par of the holes will not change in this phase. The par will stay the same.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we're back to hole 8.
Correct. So hole 8 currently has 3 bunkers in the middle of the fairway that really don't come into play too much. So we're going to rework those to make the hole play a little bit nicer. So you'll see add right fairway bunker at about 130. So that's an additional bunker. And then we will eliminate the middle bunker and renovate the one on the right. and then add another bunker up by the green, back right of the green currently, which will really make that a nice hole.
Okay.
Again, number 8 is close to the back 9, so we'll take a lot of that fill, and that'll be moved to the back.
I was wondering why this was priority for phase 1. Is it for material management purposes or?
Material management purposes, and those bunkers are chronically washing out, very poorly designed, so they're a high maintenance task for my crew. So we wanted to streamline the maintenance there, and also utilize that fill to make an improvement on the back 9.
Great. That makes sense.
So on to number 9. This is one of the wettest greens on the property, so we're going to put some drainage on that hole as well, and put internal drainage into the green itself. Currently, typically, when we have a large rain event, the back 9 will be closed completely, and we would play 1 through 9. But the 9th green would still, in most cases, be what was holding us up from even opening any of the course, because typically that, as Jim can attest to, that's typically one of the wettest greens on the property. So what they'll do is they'll come in, and it won't change the shape or form of the green at all. They'll come in and put internal drainage. They'll strip the sod. Every 6 feet, they'll put a line of drainage, a 2-inch line, and so it basically takes the water from underneath, and will move it off the green, so the green will be able to drain quicker and play much like the rest of them. We aren't doing it to all the greens because all of them don't need it. In this phase, greens number 9, 12, and 13, which are our 3 wettest greens, will have this form of drainage installed into it. So as we work through that, any questions on that? Okay. Again, we will take the soils generated from number 8 and some off number 9, and we will build a forward tee on number 10. Again, with number 10, as it is with a lot of the holes on the course, we only have 2 tees, so the juniors, elderly, ladies, all tee off the same tee. Right now, in this proposal, we will add a tee further up towards the fairway, which will help speed up play and encourage and help lower scores, because obviously the better people play, the more apt they are to come back, and the happier they're going to be with their round if they're shooting lower scores.
You did that for people like me.
Well, for everybody, for myself. Golf's a challenging sport, so if we can give people a slight advantage each hole, that's a good thing for everyone. Plus, it'll speed up the pace of play, and being a public facility with a large amount of rounds, by adding these forward tees, we're going to get people through quicker and generate more money.
This is a significant shift forward, it looks like, from next to 9 down to between 9 and 10.
Correct. I don't have the exact yardage in front of me. Again, you could look at the scorecard for that, but it is up at least, I would say, close to 50 yards, if I remember correctly.
But then, yeah, the significant portion in that hole is the improved drainage.
Correct. So when you go through that corridor of the course, if you can remember, Anasha, in our tour, holes 11, 10, and 18 are kind of all interconnected as far as the water flows. So the drainage will run from the woods to the left of number 11, through 11 fairway, over through number 10, across 18, and then down into a retention pond on to the right of 18 fairway.
That's the segment with almost a stream wetland going right through those 3 holes.
Correct. During a large rain event, it becomes a stream. If we were to go down there right now or tomorrow morning, would be a wonderful time to take a tour, and you could see these areas and how wet they get. It's unbelievable. If you went down there, you'd think there was a stream running through it right now. And
that is
so
something
again,
that they feel, you feel, looks like cumulatively, it's, you know, it's almost $100,000 worth of drainage work to those holes. Is that correct? No, sorry, I'm adding that up a little wrong.
Let's see, 25,
18,
26,
51, and then you
Yeah.
got
7,
78 is
and then 8,
58.
and then 18 would be,
Storm basin would be part of that, right?
Correct.
So 98,000.
yeah, about 100 grand, you're correct.
and that, so is that a similar running pipes through sort of a French drain type system, or is it actual pumping? What
No, that'll be all, you know, depending on the size of pipe, I would say it'd be anywhere from 8-inch to 12-inch pipe will be a main line that'll run through, and then they'll run laterals that'll be typically 4-inch to 6-inch that'll run into those main lines, that'll run all the way down into the retention basin to the right of 18. So that'll capture that whole low-lying area. There's 2 sections of the course that are wet. If you run through 11, 10, 18 in the low-lying areas, the water holds, and then again out back you go through 13, 15, or 13, 14, 15, and 16, and then there'll be another retention basin on the other side of that. It's just the way they were designed. They're pretty holes, but there's a lot of low-lying areas where the water is just captured and can't go anywhere. So this drainage will be running right through those areas.
Great.
So again, to go back through the plan, I kind of combined a few of the areas just because they're all interconnected. But number 12 will be another one of those greens that'll have the internal drainage installed. And the amazing thing with that process is that takes maybe 2 days, and they put the grass back exactly where it was. If you go to XGD Drainage on your Google, they'll show you this exact process. When the green's done, it's immediately playable. So even though most of this work will take weeks, if not a month, the greens will be back playable right away. You won't even be able to tell they did it, other than the greens will be much drier after each rain event.
Okay, and is the plan then to keep the course around it open and just close one hole at a time for a couple days?
Correct. Yeah, correct. We'll be able to work around this as we go. The goal would be to start next fall, in mid-September, once the majority of the season's over, and we get through the Rensselaer County Amateur. We would talk about starting the plans then, starting the work then. Obviously, the engineering and the planning would start immediately in January if this was funded. So back to the plan. Again, it's the same theme. You know, we're taking materials from the drainage and we're building tees. We're improving wet areas throughout the golf course, which in turn will generate revenue for the course. I mean, we anticipate to be able to get open sooner. Josh will speak more to those numbers and what that translates to revenue. But after rain events, instead of having to close the back 9 or having cart path only, or for instance this year at least 10 times we were walking only. So this year was probably the driest year you can anticipate having. And we still had 10 or 12 days that we were either closed or at least the back 9 was closed. So when you start adding that revenue up, that's significant money. And that, you know, the largest revenue source for the course other than the greens fees are the carts. So if we can't get the carts out on the property, we aren't going to be able to generate the revenue in order to pay for this stuff. And it's the same thing with maintenance. You know, if we can't get the golf carts out, I certainly can't put a 4,000-pound machine out there mowing the grass. So it goes hand in hand.
Understood. Yeah, so we'll do you have a full breakdown presentation ready for after this on anticipated revenue increases, or continue with this for now?
I can talk about it now, or you can wait till the end. Either
No,
way.
let's finish going through this, but just for folks' expectations, we'll get into that after we finish with the expenses.
Sure. So to get to the last piece, the developing the short game area, there's a large area to the right of number 1 where it's a large grassed area that we currently don't use for anything. We just maintain it just to make it, aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't come into play off of number 1. There's constantly people chipping balls in the field off of North Lake, trying to find an area to practice. Currently, we have a small practice green, small bunker. This will be an enormous green with a large fairway and large bunker where people can actually come and work on their games. Inner city kids, anyone will be able to come and utilize that and practice instead of doing it out in a softball field or sneaking onto the course and practicing on their own. Now we'll have a designated area where people will be proud to come and practice. The green will be just like the greens on the rest of the golf course, and the fairway and bunker will be maintained to the same level as the rest of the property. So it'll be a true practice area where people can work on their games and then transition to the golf course to actually play their round.
Is there any fee or revenue associated with the practice, or is it just about getting more people into it in the first place?
Just getting more people on the property. I think this year was great for golf. It was dark in a lot of ways. There wasn't much competition for golf, but there was a lot of new faces, a lot of children, a lot of people I've never seen before on the property this year. So I think it was a real bright spot for the city. And it also was a great spot for people to walk their dogs and exercise, and it was just a true asset to the entire city.
Yeah. For your work on that. Does anyone have any more questions that I should keep the map open for, or should I stop the screen share and we'll go back to the revenue side?
Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Gully.
I don't need the map, but Greg, I know we've talked about this before, and there's really not much opportunity, but some type of driving area or striking area. Will we ever see that in the future at that area, in that park?
We'd love to see it, Jim, but the only way we could do it is we'd have to eliminate the softball fields up above right of 6 or possibly off of 15th Street, but that would entail a large amount of netting and or low flight golf balls, which I don't think anybody would enjoy because it's not, to me that's not real golf. You want to be able to hit a regular ball and be able to hit it the actual distance you want it to go. Unfortunately, we're just limited with the amount of room. This practice area we're proposing won't be what you're, to that extent, but it'll be the next best thing. You'll have a beautiful bunker, a large fairway, a nice green. Plus, you're going to have the current putting green as well. For those that just want to putt, you can use the current putting green, which putts the same as the rest of the course as well. So, to answer your question, probably not, Jim. We're too landlocked around the property.
Just one more question. Do you think and I know we already had this discussion, but do you think that baseball field, that area would be large enough for a driving area if that ever came to fruition? Would that be the best spot?
I don't think, not with the road there and the homes and everything else. I don't think there's enough room. Typically, when you see people hitting over there, they're just hitting wedge shots, and I can't see that fitting over there. Like I said, unless we used balls that weren't regular distance balls, that only travel like a wiffle ball, something like that. But to me, that wouldn't be worth the investment.
No, Greg, I meant that baseball field on the left-hand side, not over by the houses. Because I know that it's used, but it's really not used that frequently. And we have the 2 fields up on top on South Lake Ave. I was just thinking that area over there by the pond and the baseball field, if that area might be useful in the future.
The best you would be able to do with that, Jim, though, would be an iron range, and an iron range isn't going to be a profitable range. You can't hit drivers, you can't hit your woods. I think in that aspect, the fields would be more of a use for the city than an iron range would be, because it's just not going to be enough room to, for the golfers.
All right, thanks.
The other piece too, Jim, is you have a large number of people use the tennis courts and utilize those fields to, fly kites and do other things where now we'd have to eliminate that space for, right now we're encouraging a lot of the residents to come use the property for things other than golf, and that would eliminate one of those areas.
All right, cool, thank you.
Any other questions there?
Chair?
Is that Council President Mantello? Sorry, I can't see you with my screen share.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, real quick, the light balls that you talked about, Jeff, back in the 90s, they actually did have a range. When we had a city manager, he put one in. It was not used. Eventually, they ended up taking it out. People did not like it, and it was not frequented at all. They did it over the pond, and it just didn't fly. No pun intended. And regarding the softball field over by the tennis courts, that's actually used quite a bit. And I actually saw it used more this year than prior years, but I'm also in some co-ed leagues, and they do play down there in addition to the two up on North Lake. So I wouldn't be in favor of getting rid of that, but saying that they did try those light, airy balls and like the wiffle ball type, and it just didn't work out well.
Okay, we will move on to expected potential increase in revenue from the ability to stay open. Right? If you have some calculation on that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Are you leaving the capital plan? I did have just a question. Andy may be able to answer it.
Sure, you can go ahead on that first.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I didn't know we were leaving. Andy or Greg, what are you proposing in terms of the 3.5? I know we talked about the other day, but in terms of timeline, obviously this is in the budget, it's in the capital plan, but the council would still have to authorize this $3.5 million bond. Do you plan to propose that early on next year? What's your time frame? And maybe all the bonds you plan to propose, and obviously it's dependent on the budget, but saying that approving the budget doesn't necessarily approve those bonds. They'll have to be done next year. So what's the timeline for the bonding? Thank you. For the proposed bonding.
So, Council President, so as you can see in the capital plan, we did a different approach than we did last year. Last year, we asked for the 3.5 authorization, but we were going to take it down in disbursements on an annual basis. As we explained during the capital plan meeting, we're going to do it on an annual basis this time, so that each year we'll come to the council with a bond amount for each subsequent year. So this year you have the 725 for phase 1, and then 22, 23, 24, and 25, you'll see the individual breakouts. So the city council will be in receipt of each of those bonding authorizations on an annual basis.
Thank you. And are you looking at in February, Andy? What's your kind of game plan for the proposed bonding?
So the plan is to bring all financing legislation, so the bond for this, the park improvement bond resolution, and the Siemens financing legislation would all come before the council on November 24th. So everything related to the budget will be passed on that evening. Is my plan.
Oh, wow. You do plan to propose that in November?
I mean, so Greg had mentioned that they want to do engineering and planning work starting on January 1st in order to meet the deadline, the estoppel period and whatnot to make the February issuance, which is now, might as well be January with the way it's moving up. It would have to be passed by December, the end of the year anyways, or right at the beginning of the new year. To me, it makes the most sense personally to bring financing legislation the same night that the budget's approved, that the capital plan is a part thereof. So to do it all at once. We have flip-flopped on that the last 2 years. 2019's budget, we brought the bond resolutions on the same night that the budget was approved. 2020's budget, we brought them in December. So it's just trying to figure out the best time to do it, but it comes back to that estoppel period and the timing and timing it that way.
I appreciate that info. I guess, you know, my concern with that, and I understand, you know, your strategy behind it. You know, we're still in COVID and, you know, like I said, when we bonded for the State Street garage, the concern is, you know, this is approximately, I believe, 13.5 or 13 mil. You know, but saying that, I just don't know where we're going to be at the end of November, and it doesn't look like it's dying down. So just I would ask, you know, obviously we have to proceed cautiously, and I just, you know, I don't think any of us know where we're going to be in terms of finances over the next 6, 7, maybe 8, 9 months. But who knows? I mean, maybe come January, it's all good, but I don't know. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there for now, and it's a larger conversation as we move forward. Thanks.
I understand what you're saying. I did leave out, I should have explained this better as well. So I believe it's $750,000, if I remember correctly, in the capital plan for phase 1. If it's authorized for $750,000, that full amount is not getting issued in February. What we'll do is we will only issue the amount needed to get to July, and then I would anticipate if construction is going to be in September, that we would issue it as part of the July. The debt would be issued in July, and then we would issue it in the tranches like we do with any other debt, similar to the Siemens project. Just because it's authorized for $5.9 million, it does not mean we're going to issue the full We may. It depends. I need to see the timeline of the project, but it does not guarantee that we issue the full debt at the next time and the opportunity that we have.
Okay, and I guess what I would ask also, if we are going to be asked to bond for the Siemens, if maybe Monica, you could have somebody from Siemens fill us in on that project, or if you feel, you know, you could do it with them. However, I just feel we need to get a better grip on that.
Are you talking about the phase 3, the one that we discussed the other night during the capital plan?
Yeah, but I'd like Siemens to come in also on phase 1 and phase 2, see how much has been appropriated out of the prior bonds, what projects have been done to date. And, you know, obviously phase 3, you gave us, you know, some pretty good insight, but I would like to know how much has been appropriated so far from the prior bonding. You know, I know that they had proposed some savings. You gave us a breakdown, I want to say maybe 6, 7 months, or maybe even a year ago, a chart. If we could update that, maybe, I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, as we talked about during the capital plan, I said I would get you guys a pro forma. Siemens is working on that. We'll show all 3 phases. It'll show the spend for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then also the remaining savings that we talked about during the capital plan.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, great. And I guess we'll move now to the sort of budgetary. We've heard some of the practical justification around the need for the upgrades to the course, but we'd like to hear sort of the budgetary plan in terms of expected how much increased tea time will be available with these initial drainage projects are done and what that means in terms of potential new revenue. So I'll turn it over to Josh, I believe, on that.
Go ahead.
So with improved drainage, we anticipate being able to open yearly earlier, between 21 and 28 days earlier than we are right now. So it's almost a month worth of revenue that we're going to gain. And then we're also, this year, for a prime example, was the driest year I can remember at the golf course. This is my 15th season there. The driest season, I still had the back nine closed between 10 and 12 times, walking only other times. So if we're opening between 21 and 28 days earlier, an average day, if we're taking between 4,000 and 5,000, 4,500, 5,500, so you multiply that by 28 yearly, and then on a wet year, we're probably closing the back between 20 and 25 times a year. And the simple matter of fact is that when the back's closed, people aren't going to come and play 9 holes because they want to play all 18 holes. So you're almost losing a whole day's revenue in there. So on a wet year, if you take it between 20 and 25 times, because this year was dry, it was 10 to 12 times, again, between 5,000 and 5,500 a day, you're talking another 100,000 right there each year that we're going to be able to get open. I mean, the best benefit is it's such a small window of the golf season upstate New York. If we can add a month in the beginning of the season, and then even add 2 to 3 weeks to the end of the season, it changes the course dramatically. Yearly, each year, get open earlier and earlier. This year, unfortunately, we would have been open April 1st this year, if not the last week of March, before COVID happened, and then it derailed it to May 1st and then June 1st with carts. So we were going to be open because it was a dry winter as well. But and on dry winter, we would be open the middle of March with the right drainage.
Okay. So you're talking, it sounds like you said 21 to 28 days earlier at the beginning, and then 2 to 3 weeks more at the end.
Yeah.
And then 10 to 15 individual days throughout the season as well. Is that about
correct? Right.
I did want to check on those individual days, and it sort of plays into the other sections you're talking about. Are those individual days that are closed the actual day that it's raining as well, or is it sort of the next day? And how does just it raining affect people's desire to come out and golf in general?
It could be a multi-day event. I'll take for example today, right? So I close today at 11 a.m. I won't reopen tomorrow. I won't reopen Saturday. And hopefully, if the course is dry enough, I'll reopen Sunday morning. So this is, it's a pretty decent rain event that we're getting right now. But just in that, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday we're closed. Sunday we'll reopen. In the summertime, even a quick thunderstorm, it can last 15 minutes. That can derail us for 3 days. Just a 15-minute storm because it drops such an intense amount of rain on us. And right now, it'll just sit. And we can't open the back. And it becomes an even bigger problem when leagues come back, because the leagues go back from front to back, front to back. So there's times in years past where I just have to wipe out leagues on a specific night. They can't even play at all because the back nine's closed as opposed to the front nine.
So when you said it was 10 to 12 times you had to close, is that 10 to 12 days, or is that 10 to 12 individual times, each of which were 3+ days?
No, 10 to 12 days, individual days.
Thank you. So, and are you talking just the back nine, or the whole course gets closed on those rainy days?
Again, like a day like today, the whole course gets shut down because the greens will, even the dry parts of the course, when you have steady rain for a 12 to 24-hour period of time, it's going to be saturated. So the whole course would shut down. In terms of when we would reopen, Sunday I can guarantee the front will be open. That's 3 days from now. I can't guarantee the back will be open 3 days from now because it's so wet, because of the lack of drainage. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Understood. And then did you say about we should use numbers around 5,800 per day?
It depends. So that's an average, because on weekends I could be doing between 7,000 and 7,500. During the week I could be doing between 4,000, 4,500. So it's all dependent on the day too. A Thursday during the week is much busier than a Monday during the week. It's a busier golf day for some reason, so that takes into effect too. So just kind of trying to do an average.
Um, So we're talking certainly in the range of $200,000 to $300,000 of potential increased revenue.
That's yearly, so that's not like a one-time thing. If I can get the course open, end of March to first week of April every year, that's gonna generate a tremendous amount of income yearly.
Correct. And just for folks' comparison numbers on that, at least this year, the proposed bonding, what would be the annual, what's the PPU and what's the annual payback on that?
I have to check with bond counsel on the PPU. Payback will be included with all the bond resolutions that come forward.
Do you have a guesstimate? Is it less than $225,000?
I would have, oh yeah.
Given that
725,000, my guess PPU at the earliest would be 10 years. If I remember right, it was 15 last year. I'm trying to remember that bond resolution. I'm almost positive it was 15 years on that PPU.
Okay. But just for conservative sake, obviously we'll get more hard numbers as we move forward. But say it was the 750 at 10 years. Do you have a rough guesstimate?
So, I mean, even that's just land.
I would want to run the numbers to see what it would be. It would be probably less than 100,000.
Even if you maintain the ban status that we all keep talking about, the governor just expanded into the 5 years to the 7 years. Even if you made annual payments on that at $725,000 plus the interest, you're still looking at a relatively decent rate. That's way less than a couple $100,000 in revenue.
Yep. Good. Thank you. So yeah, certainly it seems like, and I've always thought it's sort of this first phase is the one that makes the most clear financial sense and hopefully gets you on a footing to help fund the ongoing phases.
Correct. I mean, to be honest, there's no way to break even with this or make money unless we do this drainage project. We've come as far as we can as far as conditioning and beautifying the course. Without these drainage investments, we can't get to where we want to be.
Are there other costs we should know about in opening for another several weeks? I assume that would increase the temporary salaries a little bit, but not the permanent salaries. Is that correct, or do you think you'd need to have more permanent salaries if you're opening earlier?
No, permanent salaries would be the same. There'd be a slight increase in temporary salaries, but permanent salaries would be between the guys that we have up there right now.
Correct.
Okay, and hopefully even a little more time for them if they don't have to be managing those bunkers, etc., in quite the same way.
Correct. We're going to be able to utilize that workforce throughout the entire park instead of, pumping out a bunker and rebuilding the sand. We're going to be able to be down in the playground, beautifying around the slides and other areas of the facility.
Great. Yeah, I've talked about in the past trying to figure out how we can quantify the value of all the services that you provide beyond the golf course. I know it is a lot, so I'd just like to continue to work towards some estimate of that, but certainly we recognize that while it's all in the golf course line, there are significant benefits to the general public beyond the golf course. But right now, you don't have any process to account for when folks' time is being used on directly.
I haven't broken it out what we spend on non-play areas, but we're responsible from North Lake Ave all the way down to Oakwood. Our staff takes care of that entire area.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
I think it's roughly 265 acres.
They also help out with the Freer Park Conservancy, and then there's also a lot of people who have been doing in-kind things. Greg actually emailed me earlier this month, and there's a gentleman who wanted to actually donate crocus bulbs and literally put them along Oakwood Avenue so that when people are driving by in the spring, at the first sign of spring, there'll be this beautiful blast of color. So we're hopeful that those will hold and that they'll get a nice bloom in the spring. Just something to add joy. He apparently, the course made an impact on him this year, and he wanted to give back.
Yeah. So
Just a note, I just ran it. The PPU on this bond would be 15 years, assuming that the city this is no issuance of bond anticipation notes. It went straight to serial bond with an interest rate of 2.397%, which was the effective interest rate we got on our serial bond pre-COVID in January. The annual payback would be $58,113 on an annual basis. Using Josh's numbers of about $5,000 a day in sales, obviously 12 days covers that payback.
Great, good to hear. Thank you. Do folks have any other questions about, I guess this would be the golf course in general? Any wrap up on the golf course? Okay. Any last thoughts from you, Greg and Josh, or thanks for coming?
thank you, Council. Thanks for listening to what we have to say.
It is going to be nice next week, so if anybody wants to come up and take a tour of the place, we'd be happy to. Me and Greg would be happy to have you if you want to come up and see it. It's going to be in the 60s end of next week, so anybody's welcome to come talk to us if they want to do that.
You kind of got me thinking about coming tomorrow.
Be a little wet tomorrow, Nacho, but you're welcome to go back there and see.
You'll see what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks again.
Greg. Thanks, Josh.
Okay, we will move on to the engineering department if Aaron is available.
I am, Councilman. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. Is now a good time for you? We've got plenty of other departments.
It works. It works. So where would you guys like me to start? You want to give me a brief rundown of where we've been this year and where we're
Yeah,
headed?
you know, I know you're new in the position. We're glad to have you. We certainly love to hear how you're settling in, what some of the projects that you're excited about this year, and where you're looking at for next year, just in terms of overarching projects and processes. And then we'll get into the budget itself.
Okay. Well, so as most of you know, I started in June this year, in the middle of COVID here. I am just part-time at stage, and for the foreseeable future. This year, we finished up a number of very large projects that I myself did not have much involvement in. That includes the Riverfront Park North section, the North Wall taper, and the marina, along with the seawall. Those projects are now wrapping up, and we are finishing the paperwork on those. Moving forward, well, actually, also this year we're working on the Spring and Campbell intersection. The poles for that intersection have come in early, and so we had expected those in mid-November.
This
Yes,
is early. That's
please.
good stuff.
Yeah, we expected those in mid-November. They actually came in early. So we've milled that intersection as part of our CHIPS paving program, and Stilsing Electric is out there setting bases, and hopefully that project should wrap up in the next month, at least, substantially. We're also in the middle of our paving season, which was pushed back quite a bit later this year due to COVID. We have a handful of streets left on that program. One of the streets that we haven't had a chance to get to yet is River Street, due to some work that National Grid is doing in that area. We are hoping to squeeze that in at the end of the paving season this year. We may have to postpone that to the spring. Looking forward, we have a couple of big projects that we're doing. The Campbell Avenue Bridge, that's right near the Colleen Road Fire Station. That bridge is going to be replaced. So that project is currently in design, and we'll be starting that in the spring. We also have the next year's paving will be starting in the spring as well. That paving program, the idea there is, this year what we did, because we ran out of time, is we were piggybacking on the county bid. And what we'd like to do next year for the paving program is we'd actually like to coordinate with CDBG and pull together a complete package that includes areas of sidewalk replacement, curbing, and all of the paving, and have that let as an entire package in with the intent of stretching our dollars further, right? Getting a much better pricing, because a contractor's able to come in, do everything, and we just get better pricing with
That's
that.
great to hear. That works within CDBG rules to combine funding on a bid.
Yeah, the tricky bit on that is dividing the work, but we believe that we can let it as one project as long as we are very clear on what portions are funded with those funds. I don't have any other really large projects. There is some stuff in the capital plan, obviously, for the DPW facility on Orr Street. Our office will be involved in the planning of that. I don't have much more information on that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, internally in the department, we're not making too many changes. So if you guys have any questions about any of that.
Let's see. So just while we're on the paving for a second, I know we had been trying to put together a broader plan and budget for sidewalk replacement as well. I know that has been one of the casualties of COVID, but certainly wanted to talk with you about capacity there. That's something that technically, generally, property owners are responsible for. But in practicality, when it has been done, at least in large segments, it's been done by the city through CDBG funds and other sources of funding. And so there are certainly some fairness questions there and some strategic questions there in terms of how we spend those sidewalk dollars. And we've been talking for years about getting back to something that I think used to exist around partnering with a bank to offer loans that are either collected on the taxes. I know that gets very complicated, but I could also imagine even just partnering with a bank to offer home equity loans. But either way, going through a process where we're group bidding and where we're doing a whole couple blocks at a time to reduce that cost. Because when you do one house at a time, I imagine the costs are significantly higher in terms of deployment and everything else. Of course, government contracting factors into that. But what's your sort of sense of the cost for an individual homeowner to do a segment of sidewalk in front of their house on an ad hoc basis versus the cost for us to do it at the several block at a time level?
Sure. So to get you exact numbers, obviously, I would have to do that offline here. But there certainly is some advantages to grouping sidewalks. Along those lines, one of the thoughts that I had would be to do something similar to what the county bid does and accomplishes for the paving program that they have, which is we could have a few contractors that, through either an RFP or RFQ process that provide sidewalk replacement services for the residents of Troy. And that way you would be able to achieve that pricing without having to do an entire street, where homeowners could decide to do the sidewalk in front of their residence, but the contractors, wait until they have 20 residents to roll up. And even though the mobilization costs might not be there, at least they're performing all of that work. They have the ability to order a full load of concrete, things like that, not doing, short orders. And so you could get some cost savings there. Some combination of that, along with what you're describing, might be, it's kind of an interesting way to move forward with that program. Obviously the CDBG funds are not, they're not completely earmarked for sidewalk replacement, right? That's just what we've been using them for. They could be used for other things if we moved in a direction like that.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I certainly, right now, I have noticed there's some unfortunate incentives that have been created by the new expectation that if you wait long enough and let your sidewalks get bad enough, the city will come in and do it for you. So anything we can do to set it up so that we're giving people the support to do their own sidewalks, and so that it's not a big hit all at once, but give people the right incentives to be able to improve that streetscape, and then that could hopefully let our CDBG funds go even further. So I'll just continue to advocate for that and look forward to working with you on it into the future. That being said,
Chair?
folks have questions on the broader strategic direction, we'll get into the budget. So I do see a couple of strategic broad questions. I think from we'll start with Councilmember Ash McPherson, and then we'll go to the Council President.
Thank you. Councilman Cummings, just so you know, I did my sidewalks and they were 4,800 out in front of my house. I also have been talking to Deputy Mayor and asking about putting a sidewalk program together, because we have many areas up here and throughout the city that do need help in putting sidewalks together. I know I did a home equity loan on my sidewalks. And like I said, it was $4,800, and I had that a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I just had them done out front and all the way through the back. But the front was just $4,800.
And sorry, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing what the annual cost to you is over the period? No pressure if you don't want to, but just for the public's knowledge, if you happen to know.
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think but mine was much higher. I went with 10,000 because I had to do further sidewalks back and other work I had done as well. But
Okay.
Just the front was $4,800 or 4,800, and I will find that out for you though.
Good, thank you.
Aaron, I'd like to ask you about, I think I spoke with you about some paving that's being done up here on 6th Ave. And I've gone down between 100 and, I think it's 104th and 103rd on 6th Ave where they're doing the repaving. And what I noticed is what they're doing down there is a section, and they had to stop because there was some issues that they had to stop and wait for rain, I think we had. But I noticed when they're doing the blacktop, they're not doing any curbing and whatnot. They're just going as the curb goes along. So there really isn't any curb dig out. If the curb is flat to the ground, it's being left flat to the ground. Shouldn't they be building that up as they're doing it? Again, I don't know. I don't know the whole process of it, but I just noticed that, and I thought that was pretty odd.
I've myself witnessed what you're describing in other areas of the city. So what you're talking about is the curb reveal, and so as part of the CHIPS program, that funding does not cover the resetting of curbing along a roadway. There also are some areas in the city that the sidewalks have been in the location they've been for quite some time. In order to create that reveal, we would have to replace the sidewalks as well. And in certain areas, that's not feasible. I'll also say that our paving program, the intent of it is to mill and fill. So the final elevation of the asphalt should not differ greatly from the existing condition to the finished condition. That being said, there are certainly areas where we should try to find the funding or ways of funding the resetting of curb. because I do believe that, you know, that can lead to drainage issues further down the line. You just don't have the same capacity along those curb lines when we have larger storm events. So
Correct.
it's something that we should look into, but I don't know if the CHIPS program is the avenue to address those concerns.
The other piece to the concern on that is when I was looking at these, and if we're doing sidewalks, sections of the sidewalks as well, and we're allowing cars to park on top of them, so it's really pushing them down into the ground even further. So you have no, it's like the road is continuous, or the sidewalk is continuous into the road. There's no separation of it. And my concern is looking at it is if you do, or somebody decides to put in new sidewalk or whatnot, now they have to dig up that section of the curbing, and they're responsible for that, a homeowner I'm talking about?
That is accurate. That is what the currently how our code reads. The homeowner is responsible for the gutter line, curb line, and the sidewalk in front of their home. I understand your concern about vehicles parking on the sidewalk. That's certainly something that has been brought to my attention in my short time here. You know, it's easy to say that that's an enforcement issue, but the curbing certainly allows for that to take place. And so, you know, I think that that's something that we should look into addressing as we move forward with these sidewalk replacements, whether they be done on the city's dime or on the taxpayers' dime.
Preferably not on the taxpayers, but thank you. I'm all set.
Great. And we'll, Council President, did you still have a question?
Nope, I want to make sure that Councilmember Ash McPherson, and just say ditto, she has been trying to get a program in place for sidewalks, whether it's maybe a 50-50 type of loan program, something to that extent. I do recall when I was on the council in a prior tenure, we did have the program, and what homeowners would do is, like you said, Aaron, they would join together, whether it be, 4 or 5 homeowners, but they weren't individuals. So the city incentivized homeowners to join together and do a whole block or do 2/3 of a block. And my mother-in-law, actually, over on Kinloch, she joined with 3 or 4 homeowners on their street to do their sidewalk. They didn't receive any money, but I do know that some homeowners do try to work together because obviously it's a better deal in the long run. So, and great news, Aaron, on the Spring and Campbell. I know Councilmember Zaluski, I saw him almost pop out of his chair, but I do know folks up there are very frustrated, to say the least. So that's some good news. So thank you. And Aaron has also helped in a number of areas with a 4-way stop in a certain area and some other issues down in South Troy. So thank you, Aaron. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add in terms of the grouping folks together to do sidewalks all at once, from a public benefit standpoint, it's obviously a lot more valuable to the public to have a whole block that is now accessible than to have one homeowner that's done the right thing and made it smooth, surrounded by folks where it's still not accessible for many folks. And so I think there is an inherent public benefit in that. And that is a thing that we could justify spending some taxpayer dollars on incentivizing folks to do larger segments than would otherwise happen. Maybe not in this super tight budget year, but certainly as we look towards next year and maybe even the June bonding issue, things improve. So. That being said, I think if there's no further questions on the broad overview, we'll jump into the specific budget, which would be on page 54 for anyone following along. Okay. So there is a drop in permanent salaries and an increase in temporary salaries. Do you want to go over that? Start.
Sure, yes. So the drop in the permanent salaries directly relates to my position and it being part-time. And so what we did was I moved some of what had been allocated in previous years from that salary line item, accounted for what I estimate to be my my salary going forward, and then reallocated those funds elsewhere in our budget.
We also have a part-time staff member, Doug Wilkie's in there as well too for his work around Siemens.
Great. Good. And you said you sort of reallocated funds throughout a little bit. Can you just talk through that?
Sure. Not. I don't believe all of them, but so let's see. So some of the increases, office equipment. We've asked for some more funding for that. Specifically, those we'd like to use that funding to purchase some CAD software to accommodate any computer upgrades required to run that software, and then we would like to purchase either a plotter or a scanner or both of those items in order to handle larger format prints, and basically just to allow the office to produce some product and to cut down on the consulting fees that that the department had been expending. Some of the other increases. I'm sorry.
That's that office equipment line as well?
Yes. And then some of the other increases that we are looking for, vehicle and gas. We're asking for some more funding for that simply because that's what we've been using in years past. And that's just to accommodate more accurately what's actually being used for that line item. We are not proposing a change to the consultant services line item. That had been $50,000. We're asking for the same amount in 2021. We did overshoot that amount this year. So the hope is that we are able to not exceed that in this coming year. Another increase would be under training expenses. And the idea behind that is to have the staff here receive some training, either for CAD software or for other inspection-related services, construction-related services. We do have a staff member here who doesn't have as much of an engineering background as perhaps certain aspects of their job may require. So we'd like to get some additional training for that type of stuff.
Great. And just to be clear on that consultant services line, I assume most engineering consultant services are on project lines. What are the sort of consultant services that end up just in the overall engineering budget?
So that's anything that is required either by our office or code for third-party review relating to services the city needs to provide. So that might be the review of complex building plans for a proposal within the city that would typically be reviewed by code enforcement. And so, we might have to have a consultant come in for that. Also, structural assessments of city-owned property would fall under that line item as well. One of the changes I did make, and this doesn't necessarily affect this budget, but overall, we have instituted an account for escrow for private development within the city to have those reviews done, and the cost for those reviews borne by the applicant. In the past, that had come out of the planning department's consulting line item. I imagine occasionally it came out of this line item as well, but I believe planning took the brunt of that. So those costs will no longer be paid for by the city.
Is that budgeted in the revenue, or is that sort of just off budget because it ends up?
It's net zero. So what comes in goes out or goes back to the applicant. So there's no change in revenue or expenses.
Great. Okay. Any other questions on the budget itself?
Chair.
Is that Councilmember Ashman McPherson? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Aaron, I just got to ask a question again. You said the line 102 is a temporary salary of 70,000, which was for you, correct? For your part-time position?
And Doug Wilkie in our office, yes.
In what? I'm sorry, missed that.
Doug Wilkie in our office. He's also part-time.
Okay, so that's for the two of you is in there, because I know Deputy Mayor just said it's for another part-time position, and I didn't see a part-time position created, so I was kind of maybe.
Yeah, actually, when I look on page 57, I don't see either of the part-time positions on that sheet.
I don't either. That's what I was.
Yeah, I don't see where that's broken down. I do have a breakdown for my estimate, and I think it was.
We don't.
It was basically 50,000, 20,000 was the breakdown I had.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Aaron.
50,000 for city engineer, and then 20,000 for Mr. Wilkie's title is the mechanical electrical systems coordinator.
So you got a 50,000 part-time city engineer that's not on here, and a 20,000 part-time that's not on here as well?
The part-time employees are not listed on that breakdown of employees. Those are only our full-time employees.
But that's 70,000, we should have it listed, shouldn't we?
Part-time employees are located in the 102 line. The personnel breakdown at the end of each account is a breakdown of the 101 line. Even like if you just looked at Josh at the golf course.
I don't want to go to the golf course. I want to just ask the question here so I understand.
I understand what you're saying.
Aaron, let me finish. So you're being said to me that 70,000 was between Aaron and someone else, but now it's between somebody else, 50,000 and 20. I'm just wondering if there's two part-time people coming on. That's what I was confused.
No. There are two part-time people currently on staff. That is myself, city engineer, and our mechanical systems coordinator, Doug Wilkie.
Okay, there's not another one coming on. Okay.
No, we are not adding any staff to our department in 2020.
Thank you. That's what that's what I misunderstood. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. I guess in general, would it be possible to have a report on all of the titles under the 102 line across the budget? Is that a difficult thing to generate? Andy?
Are you looking for it by title, or what would that?
Yeah, I guess title and department. We've got a lot of temporary salary lines that are not broken down in the same level of detail that we get on the permanent salaries. So it would be interesting to see.
We could look at doing that, but we could provide what, engineering is straightforward, right? It's the city engineer, and it's Doug Wilkie's. Then I can never remember his title. The tricky part is like when you get to golf. If we put it out, like if they decide to change the title from X to Y, it's not just to pigeonhole them into it.
So although the positions are established by civil service, so the titles are established through civil service. And then the challenge becomes is if, say, for example, streets or golf has, you know, X amount of $10,000, just to use a round number, $10,000 for part-time staff. You know, there's various ways to fill that. You could do 3 positions. You could do, maybe they don't hire all 3 positions and they only run with 2. So yes, you could do that, break it down, but that's why they put the dollar amount so that you know that there is a limit on what they spend for the part-time. So it's not always, they don't necessarily always hire all the part-time staff either. I mean, Bill Wangler in traffic department, he had it, but because of COVID, we didn't hire it. So I think that that's part of the challenge too. It's not as crystal clear as the full-time personnel.
Yeah, maybe we'll just include it in our reports. You know, certainly, you know, with the golf, we got a report on the rough number of people they hope to hire. And as you say, that can change during the year. It doesn't need to be part of the budget, but it is interesting to know the rough deployment.
We can get you rough by department, but to do a breakdown like we do for the personnel for the 101 line, that'll be a little bit more difficult. But we can get you rough numbers for each department.
Great. If that's easy, that's great. Otherwise, we can do it in the budget hearings individually. But if we can do an overall report, that would be great. Okay. That being said,
Chair?
further? Yes, Council President Mantello.
Yep, quick question, Aaron. The consultants, I do notice each of the departments have different consultants. However, do we utilize the same consultant for, say, 2 or 3 departments? Because I notice in your administration, your budget for the administrative, you have a consultant of 50. And then if you go later on, I think street maintenance, there's a $200,000 consultant line item. And I think later on, there's another one. Do you try to combine those or, you know, because engineering firms obviously perform, you know, multiple areas, or are they all different consultants?
So currently the city has a term contract with CDM Smith, and that was originally done through Department of Public Utilities. So CDM Smith's main focus for them was to do sewer and water modeling for the city. Along with CDM Smith, there are 2 subs under that contract. That includes CHA Consulting and also, I might have this wrong, I believe it's H2M Architecture. So the 3 of those firms have historically, at least for the past 4 years, I believe, provided the city with essentially all of their consulting services that were not tied directly to a project. So, you know, for instance, the South Troy Industrial Road had a completely different consultant doing the design, but that was paid for under that project. Moving forward, what I would like to see happen is I would like to, and I've already started this process, by releasing an RFQ for structural services, is I would like to try to separate the consultant services that we require into sort of individual disciplines. So that might be an engineer that has the experience in water and sewer, like a CDM Smith, and a separate consultant for structural services, perhaps a separate consultant for parks and landscape architecture or something like that. And I wouldn't like to see it not limited to an individual consultant for any discipline, where we actually have 2 or 3 consultants to provide structural engineering services. And the idea being simply that opens up the city to perhaps smaller firms that specialize in those areas, and would also create some competition for the bidding and proposal process. And again, with the hopes of driving down the costs for those services, but also increasing the quality and the attention to detail that we would get from those consultants.
I really like to hear that, Aaron. I think it's a great strategy. Very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, great. We've got lots of other departments to go through. I don't know how many with significant changes, but is there any other, first of all, any other questions for engineering? And then Hearing none, are there any other departments that you, Aaron, wanted to address? I know you have some involvement with code enforcement. I know this year we're doing a big bunch of parking projects, but is that all going to go back over to the deputy mayor and commissioner?
I saw a thumbs up, so I believe that's a yes.
Okay, well then, thank you, Aaron, for your time, and good luck at the planning commission.
Okay, thank you. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me. Thank you.
But yep, thanks again.
All right, bye.
Bye. Okay, and onward to, I guess we'll now go through the various general services lines in order of the budget. So we'll start with administration on page 58, unless there's any overview comments that either the commissioner or deputy mayor wanted to make.
I would just like to start off by saying this has been a challenging year for all departments. Our departments have been united. They've been working and continue to work diligently. I know we've been behind a little bit due to the pandemic, but our departments have been working hard to play catch up, and I appreciate all the work that's been going on. With that being said, the City Services Administration, the only change that has been made was the postage line. The office supplies was decreased, and the postage line has been increased based on the 2020 projections.
Okay. Permanent salaries went up a little bit. Is that contractual?
Yes.
Okay. On administration before we. Okay. Onward to facilities maintenance on page 62.
Let's see here. We had a slight increase in overtime based on the projections. For the most part, all of that has remained the same or has been decreased.
Okay. Can you talk about, I know there's been some changes in over the last few years in how these various lines are broken down in work. So if you could, just for folks, do an overview of the type of work the facilities maintenance line takes care of now.
Facility maintenance pretty much maintains all of the city buildings and any of the problems that those buildings incur. The police department, if anything happens at the police department, someone from the facility staff would be there to either fix the door, help assist cleaning something up, whatever happens in a city facility is the facility department will take care of.
Okay. Did we have a question from Councilmember McPherson?
I did. I just want to clarify on the raise on the commissioner's salary, 1,700. Looks about 1,700. You're contractual as management?
It's that the non-rep policy was amended earlier this year. That included pay increases for everyone that fell under that policy.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if it was contractual. When he said that, I'm like, wait, okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to central garage unless there's anything else. That's page 66. Do a quick overview of the work each department does and then any changes in the budget.
Central garage pretty much maintains every issue we have with our fleet, with the exception of DPU, fire, and police. We had a large decrease in the gas and oil. We had an increase for other equipment, which we're looking to get a pressure washer, drill press, some miscellaneous equipment that's needed. Basically, the pressure washer is one of the main things that we're looking at that will basically help us clean all the vehicles, remove salt, debris, things of that nature, to try to maintain and keep those vehicles longer. And that's pretty much it. One thing we are trying to do with the DPW garage, and one thing we're trying to look at citywide, is a centralized procurement for parts. We also have the option that we can utilize and piggyback off the county bid. But one thing we're trying to do is get all the departments, including police and fire, to have a centralized purchasing for parts to reduce the cost of the parts.
Okay. Let's see. Is the reduction in gas and oil, is some of that moving into other departments, or is there just a lot less driving going on?
Similar to what Aaron said earlier, there was shifting to gas and oil throughout, based off of the actual amounts that were expended over in 19 and 20.
Yeah, but actuals were 16,000 in 2019, and we're budgeting 7,000. So is some of it moving to another department?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yes, there was a realignment for all of them.
Okay. All right.
Chair,
Go ahead. Sorry, I don't know who that was, but go ahead.
that was me, thanks. Chuck, I just want to ask you, how many vehicles are used by supervisors? Are those the electrical vehicles that they're using, or is this
No, the electrical is utilized by the code department.
code? So how many vehicles do we have that the supervisors are using? Of the trucks?
Every supervisor has a vehicle.
And at the end of the shift, are those trucks to be left there, or they take them home?
Most are left. Some do take them in case they are on call or get called throughout the night, or if they have the on-call phone to get to a location quicker.
Okay. And how many trucks do we have that are utilized that way?
Probably four. That take them home, or that are with the supervisors.
That take them home.
Rotating basis.
It's on a rotating basis, but some, the majority, like streets will have them, they'll take them home, for the on-call basis.
Okay. Approximately 4, maybe 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
And there are no additional vehicles in this budget still, is that correct? And can you just talk about the state of the fleet and
honestly, the state of the fleet is getting better. We're trying to do a turnover with some of the vehicles. Some of the larger vehicles we do have some issues with, garbage trucks, larger snowplow vehicles. This fleet is getting older, but we're also trying to turn it over in a process. One thing we're looking at is a fleet management program for next year to offset some of the costs that we have to repair these vehicles.
Great. What percentage of the work done in the garage do you think sort of tracks back to rust and issues with salt degrading the vehicles?
What percentage? To be honest with you, Naja, I don't know realistically the percentage.
I mean, we can ask Sean.
I can ask Sean about the percentage, but quite honestly, our central garage is busy. They're always repairing something along. And if it's a larger project that they can't handle with, we'll say a garbage truck, because at any point something could break down, and it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. And those are the situations that we have to send them out.
Some of the common things we've heard, I would say during more like under snow operations, it would be the jarring and potentially like the plow equipment versus maybe the salt degradation. I think there's salt degradation over years, but the more immediate stuff you see is actually the really rough wear and tear during the winter months. But then also, you got to also keep in mind a lot of the larger vehicles, they're diesel engines, which take a lot of extra care. But there's also a lot of hydraulics. So the dump trucks, the garbage trucks, anything that's got a hydraulic line on it, they also have a lot of time and attention that gets paid to them, especially for the vehicles that are older.
And then, have obviously we're looking at the capital plan for a new building. Am I right in thinking that that may also help reduce some maintenance costs for the trucks that are stored in rougher conditions right now?
That would assist, yes.
Great. Let's see. Any other questions on Central Garage, or shall we move on to traffic control on page 97? Okay. Traffic control on page 97 it is.
Traffic control, basically, they paint the crosswalks, they paint the lines in the streets. Any street light that goes down, they take care of. They put up signage. They take down street lights. There's been a reduction in overtime. There has been a reduction in other equipment. There's been an increase in materials and supplies, and that is basically some electrical work and necessary signs. There's been an increase in gas. And the utilities traffic signals, which is all the signals in National Grid.
Okay. Looks like there's an elimination of their temporary salary, $20,000 that was in the budget for this year. What was that, and why is it going away? Or is it moving?
Actually, I didn't want
So that was the 102 line. That was the temporary salaries that we tried to put in last year. Last year, they were never used. In 2019, I think we gave them some. They were not used. 2020, we eliminated them due to COVID. And it's something that, if anything, we're actually looking to see if there's a possibility to utilize the Youth Bureau program through the county again, through the employment services. It is a little challenging once you get into this public works work, because you got to make sure the age-appropriate work can be done by them. But they've been moving along at pretty good clip. With all of the improvements as far as with the paintings and stuff like that, like the crosswalk striping, what we've seen is doing it through the CHIPS program. We've had a lot of streets renovated this year, like CDTA and a lot of that stuff. So a lot of that stuff is getting done during projects. So they've been hopefully, the other piece of it is the traffic department supervisor actually is looking to switch the type of material that's used in the crosswalks so that it'll actually stay longer, so that you don't have to do it on an annual basis. So we felt that we would be able to look at the temporary salaries as a reduction this year, just based on those kind of accomplishments.
Is that moving to like a
not ideal. It's not ideal, but it's also, you know, we would love to have the part-time help, and it's not ideal, but trying to figure out the budget.
Okay. It was, I guess, primarily for sort of crosswalk and striping sort of things more than signage?
Yeah, exactly. It was more just to kind of take the summer months and maybe employ some college kids or some young adults and get them out there and help with the crosswalk initiatives. But again, like I said, you know, it's something that we would love to do. This department typically hasn't had, in the time that I've been here, hasn't had part-time help. They might have had it before. So it's certainly something we want to grow to. I think every department would be successful. It's a nice way to groom potential people to work for the city. We've seen a great success with that in some of the other departments. So it's certainly something that we would like to add, but right now, given the circumstances, we felt we could do that.
If sales tax comes surging back next year, think about coming back to us for that later in the summer. That being said, any other questions on traffic, or shall we move on to parking on 101? Other notes? Okay, parking on 101.
So Andy and I are going to tag team this because that's how it started. So we've ended up splitting out parking and taking all of the parking and putting it into one budget code. We're actually looking to do this so that we can start quantifying the costs so that we can better align parking systems, parking structures, infrastructure, along with the assets and the revenue and the expenses of it. We are planning to bring on a parking supervisor. This individual will be in charge of all aspects of parking, from the online permitting to the kiosks to managing the parking enforcement officers and the maintenance of those facilities as well too. This is just a starting point. We actually see this department expanding in out years, just because you want to make sure that you can manage our parking instead of letting it manage us. We want to be able to manage it and be able to successfully be able to control, manage, and grow it if needed, and grow it correctly. So you'll see a permanent salary in there. There's temporary salaries. The temporary salaries are the 4 parking officers, parking enforcement officers. We are bringing them back next month to get them retrained on the new parking system that you guys approved. So we're going to get them in and trained on the new handhelds and get them out and about back into the city-wide. I know most people tend to think of parking as just a downtown issue. Parking enforcement actually is a citywide initiative. So actually get them out and about throughout the city and getting reacclimated with those new pieces of equipment. Really not a whole other things, some of the maintenance or the materials and supplies. And then the consulting services is actually the cost of the contracts.
Correct. So the consultant services is primarily, if not entirely, FBS, which is the parking ticket software, and then also the estimated cost for Passport based off of the cost breakdown that was included with the contract.
Okay.
So that's really, I mean, it's a new department essentially, and it's just starting, so it's pretty lean at this moment.
Okay. Let's see. Where do we stand on the State Street garage renovation timeline there, and then plans for any changes to management of it?
I do apologize. I just before that, I missed the consultant that's included in that. That's also Calais, who handles the city's parking meters currently. So it's an estimate of all the costs related to parking.
So that'll be the switch from Calais to the parking to the Passport.
Correct.
State Street Garage. So they're working on. They're working with the engineers and also with the contractor on the concrete repairs. The timeline is they're hopeful, obviously, weather dependent, given tonight and tomorrow, to get those, hopefully a majority of those done. They will continue into the spring. They will go floor by floor still, so we still anticipate keeping it open while that work occurs. And then in the spring is when they anticipate they'll be doing the work on the stairwell.
Okay. And then on the revenue side, we have an increase of $75,000 on the parking fines budget. Am I right? Does that include the permits themselves, or is that in a separate section?
Permits are in a separate section.
So the parking fines are court, right?
Parking fine, so the increase from 625 to 700 was based off the trend we were seeing prior to COVID. As we talked about 2 weeks ago, COVID did play a factor into the revenue estimates. For me, when I looked at parking tickets, with the parking enforcement officers not working, obviously, because of COVID, obviously, there's no revenue there, but bringing them back in November will spur ticket writing again and then increase revenue collection. So it was in an effort to align it with what we've been seeing, like I said, pre-COVID.
And then all the other revenue is under the transportation line?
It's under...
Garage, parking lots, parking meters, and towing administrative fees?
Yeah.
It's 1720.
Yes, that's it, yes.
So most of that revenue would be sort of under this department at the end of the day. I suppose some of it comes under the police department as well?
The parking garage, the lots, and the meters?
No, sorry, on the fine section.
The parking fines come from this department. The traffic fines come from the police department.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sure.
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I got a question on the temporary salaries. You said there was 4 employees in the temporary salaries,
Correct.
part-time, full-time?
Part-time?
Okay, so the permanent is a full-time position coming on?
Correct.
That person gonna be on the streets as well?
Yeah, they'll be both an inside and an outside. They'll do a lot of groundwork like maintenance and those kinds of things, but also be on the inside, you know, managing and working as an interface between the public as well as with our vendors.
So they won't be doing, that person won't be doing parking tickets per se. We'll still only have the 4.
Correct. They will not be doing parking tickets. They'll be managing the parking system.
There's
So-
more than enough work for that person to do.
Yeah.
So the 4 that are gonna be part-time, are they just gonna be Monday through Friday? Or are they just Monday through Friday? I'm just asking because I don't know.
So right now they work Monday through, well, prior to COVID, they worked Monday through Friday. I think that's one of the things that we want to kind of analyze and have a conversation about is what are the hours, what makes sense, you know, really bring somebody in that understands that industry and understands, you know, what other municipalities do. If it's something that we want to make sure that Saturdays and Sundays are available so that people can come, shop, dine, and gather downtown, that is something we need to look at as well. And I think that's the ability to do that. But the previous years, you know, the retired police officer Paul Gordon's kind of led the charge with the parking enforcement officers. So the dollar amounts that you see from their ticket writing, you know, they've really done a stupendous job for just being 4 part-time, anywhere from 2 to 4 part-time people.
So these four part-time people, are they just located downtown, or do we have them located driving around throughout the city?
So they're both, parking enforcement is all citywide. So I know a lot of people tend to think that it is just downtown, but it is a citywide initiative. So they go through, you know, go by the hospitals, they go in the streets. If it's parking on, you know, what made me think about it is when you were talking about parking on the pavement, you know, that's a ticket, that's a parking ticket. They can go, you know, if there's a handicap parking space on the street that somebody's not handicapped, you know what I mean? So there's all of these kind of parking in front of hydrants, all around the campuses, parking in a crosswalk. All of those things are tickets that these guys actually enforce.
The reason that I'm just going down these lines is because what I'm thinking is, and I have mentioned it with Steve Streichman numerous amount of times, and him and I have driven around, and I've shown him what I was talking about, is with the buses driving down on 2nd Ave, 5th Ave, and they're stopping in the middle of the streets, and they're not pulling over because they can't pull over because there's cars parked in the bus pickup area. And to get enforcement of the cars not parking there because they shouldn't be parking there, so the buses pull over. So that's what I was just questioning in there.
Yep, that's also something they can do, parking in a no parking zone.
Yep, so I'd like that to be really looked at too, so if that's a possibility when they come back. Thank you.
Welcome.
Just on that, do the new CDTA Bus Plus stops have cameras in them?
Actually, you know what? Captain Barker was meeting with CDTA just the other day in regards to what abilities that CDTA had, what that relationship was going to look like, and how they could assist. I know they were talking about doing something with the shelters, and then obviously the buses have cameras. That's how we help solve the quadruple homicides. But yeah, so definitely I know they were having conversations about doing something potentially with the structures. I'm not sure of the details, but I know that was a conversation that was being had.
All right. I guess loop them in with these folks in theory if there's a way to do a digital check quickly and look at all the bus stops and see if anyone's parked there rather than having to do rounds. You can be a little more proactive that way. I don't know what the technological capability that would be, but it certainly seems like it could help solve that problem.
Certainly.
Let's see. Any further questions on parking, or should we move on to code enforcement on 114?
So code enforcement, I'm going to run through that, just letting Aaron get acclimated to the new position before he dives into anything code related. Again, you'll see a reduction in the permanent salaries, and that's because of the fact we had a retirement last year, and the replacement for that position doesn't make as much as the retiree did. We do have overtime because these guys are on, these people, we do have men and women in this department, are on call. The comp buyouts are contractual, the longevity is contractual, their office supplies. We did increase the other materials and supplies because last year, if you remember, we added a code enforcement officer. So, you know, when you go through iPads and briefcases and all those kinds of things for the crews, we just added a little bit to that to be able to accommodate that. Their gas and oil remain the same, although they don't have a lot of it because they are running those electric vehicles as much as possible. This year was kind of an anomaly. You see how low it was because keep in mind that code enforcement was pretty restrictive unless it was an emergency call. We couldn't do any interior inspections for several months. So they were also on the platoon system that we implemented early COVID, so that you don't see a lot of expenditure in any gas or oil for them as well. Postage increased a small amount just because the amount of fines and information we are sending out. Printing and advertising stayed the same. Training expense. So code officers need training just like everybody else. In fact, they have to do annual credit hours in order to stay certified. What we've been trying to do is do as many free programs as possible, but with the new employees coming on, we just want to make sure that we give them every available opportunity to attend some trainings. And there are some other trainings that do have a fee to them that we've typically not done, but we want to be able to open the door to make sure that they get a little bit more exposure to some of those. Most of those are online, so you can see that the travel expense wasn't increased. Uniforms for their boot allowance have been absorbed under the general services admin line, and then pension and the rest are status quo.
I know I was looking back at last year's budget report, and I remember we were talking about the senior account or the account clerk position. Is the senior account clerk new, or was that discussion of adding another? I couldn't remember which that was.
So the senior account clerk, she's been there for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we were discussing last year about potential need for more account clerk time. What's been your assessment there? Does the technology help them on that front, or?
So the technology helps them, yes. But I think the biggest challenge is because when we had to do, back in 2017, when we had to do the layoffs and the removal of some of those positions, one of the positions was in this department. The interface, right now it's okay because we don't do a lot of interface with the public and a lot of it is through online or through phone calls. But there is a lot of phone calls through this department, just because whether it's somebody following up, trying to get an inspection, somebody calling to get a permit, or it's somebody calling to call in a complaint, this department does receive a volume of phone calls. So not having that position, definitely you feel it, because everybody's on the phones now, where before it rolled to the desks and then maybe rolled on to some of the, you know, the other inspectors. So I think that they've definitely felt that, but the change in technology has also helped them as well, because that one account clerk that was processing all of the fines and all of the violations, those are now being done by those officers themselves. So it's made it a little bit more efficient, but they still definitely feel the pinch. If there's one thing I would probably wish for, perhaps in 2022's budget, is to put the account clerk back in, as well as another code officer, to make sure that we can get a full, almost like a zombie task force on the interior, just so we can get Eric some assistance with the zombie property pieces, but also so we get another code inspector out on the floor.
Okay. When we were in the technology meeting, we were talking about a couple of things that are relevant here. One is some of the workflow automation that is possible within CityView to sort of auto-generate violation letters, etc. Have you started to delve into that? and/or what's the process to start streamlining those workflows so we can get them out on the street with as much time as possible?
So they've been doing, so the new City View that Belinda built is definitely, they keep tweaking it. So they have like automatic letters and all those kinds of things. So it becomes an automatic like a purge almost. So they come back, they dock it essentially, and then it uploads. A lot of the integrations that we've been talking about actually kind of fall on more of the upper level code enforcement kind of things. So when somebody does come in for a permit and then they go in and they apply for the permit gets entered, and then the planning review and zoning review is included in that. So a lot of kind of what Aaron had talked about before, about being able to stream that process so that we can keep everything intact for that file. So every building has its own file on CityView, so that way it's almost like a complete chapter and a complete book of that building itself, which will help with across departments, you know, FOIL requests, all that kind of things. It'll help assessor's office, everything.
That's good to hear. But yeah, certainly anything we can do to streamline their process for sending out violations, etc. And then the other thing we were talking about at the technology committee meeting is, I guess you have sort of automatic answering service at the mayor's office. So wondering if there's any discussion or potential use in a similar system. A, how's that working? And B, could you think about a similar thing that would reduce some of that call time pressure from the code officers when they're in there trying to get their reports done?
So actually code enforcement's the one who started it. So they first started with the phone tree, especially when they lost that account clerk a couple years ago. That was when Warren was still here, so they developed that phone tree. So when you call and you need to file a complaint or you need to touch somebody, you know, you dial a specific number. The phone tree for the mayor's office is great. You know, I will tell you that Laura, when she's in the office, she answers the phone. She just does not like to let it ring. But when there isn't somebody sitting at the desk, which can't happen all the time, at least the person is prompted to get to where they were. What it did was, for a long time when we first started, Laura kind of actually took a tally of what people were calling about. Amazingly, a lot of people call for city clerk, and I'm sure Mara can back this up, city clerk, vital statistics, and those kinds of things. So when you listen to the phone tree, we kind of put them in a little bit of order. So that people, when they didn't have to wait to hear what they needed to go, and then they just figure it out. So it's actually it was really beneficial during COVID.
Sure. Okay, well, but good to hear the code office was ahead of the game on that. Any other questions on the code enforcement system?
Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Rafford.
Deputy Mayor, I think I might have missed it, and I just want to make sure, or Andy, I don't know who can answer this. On page 117, the assistant code inspector is, for 2021, is going to be 45,000, but then the senior building inspector is nothing in their dollar amounts for 21, 22? Am I not reading that right?
So the senior building inspector was a position that was created this year, so that's why it's zeroed out. It's a position that it's a title that we're not using, we're not funding for this year. And then, which one did you say? The principal?
101 assistant code inspector. It's got 20 and 21 for 45,000.
Fourth one down.
The second one down?
Fourth
Oh.
one down.
Fourth one down.
So that is, so that was,
Vacant position, it's currently vacant. That position
Yeah.
is currently vacant and is being funded in 2020.
right, so,
One.
yeah, so the current salary is not, there is no position in that one now. That's the one, so part of the challenge is
Lost you.
Sounds like you're
You
back.
there?
Yeah, are you here? Can you hear us?
Gotcha.
Oh, we had a little auto attendant give us some instructions. So that assistant code inspector was not filled this year. It was a vacant position. So that way, remember when Andy talked about this really early, the salary structures on this listing are current employees. So during COVID, obviously we weren't doing a lot of inspections. So with the COVID budget, we took the funding out of that position. But in addition to that, we also, the list that we had, you always hear us talk about the civil service test. The list we had was already canvassed and didn't have any other additional people on it. And the one person we canvassed it, we interviewed him, and he didn't want the position. So now we have a new list out. It was just certified. So now we have the ability, and there's 2 extra people on it. 2 of our current employees got certified. And then there's additionally, I think, 2 other employees that we're going to actually fill this position with.
So right now it's vacant, but you have employees that you're going to put into that spot
For January 1st.
for January 1st.
And just to be clear, it's not a new position. It was just vacant this year.
Correct.
Although, was it new in 2020? Was that the one we added in for 2020?
That's the one we added for 2020 budget.
That was just never filled and will be next year.
Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And my next question is, I know, Monica, you and I talked before, and I don't know, a while ago, and I don't know if it's been changed. Are the code inspectors back to doing zones?
So I know that's something that Dave's been talking about going back into. Again, with COVID, we didn't really go into the zone aspect of it because we really didn't need to. So it'll be something that we take a look into next year. As far as once we get all the inspectors on board. The challenge with, like, we have one new code inspector right now. He literally did his training during COVID. It was a really great time to train, except for the fact you couldn't do inspections on interiors, but he actually got his coursework done. The challenge with that, though, is that by doing zones, you almost have to have enough trained bodies so that when you do bring somebody new on, you aren't doubling up zones, because that's what happened this past year, because we didn't have enough people. So when you were training somebody, you couldn't fill all the zones. So we did not do zones this year for code, because it would have been huge. Like,
so if we do, I would really recommend and would really ask to put them back into zone, because it really worked well when they were in zones.
So I think it does, as long as, so I'm going to be really honest with you. Zones work really great, but I will tell you they need to be tossed up and moved around, probably on an every other year basis.
And that's fine, but they should have zones, because I like the way they worked in the zones before, because you had the exact people, you knew who you were working with. I mean, now you don't know who to call because they're all over. But that's just something I'd like to have seen put back in together where they're in zones. Thank you.
I know it's something that they've been looking at. I will tell you too, when they do that, so when they get an inspection, because they do a lot of inspections, right, for DSS and stuff, and when they're out, they have a schedule. So when calls come in, so say for example, if Adrian is up in Lansingburg doing its scheduled inspections, as calls come in, if they're in that area, they're deployed to her for that day. Or she has follow-up schedules the next day. So they're able to kind of make sure that we're not sending everybody all over, all over the city zigzagging. So we try to, like, when we talk about zones, if somebody's in that zone for that day, then they get the stuff for that day. So they're trying to do it. I know it's not an assigned zone like you're talking about, and like what we most likely will go back to. But again, the problem with zones is if one officer is in it too long, then, just like everybody, sometimes you get a blind eye to certain things. And then you get a little bit immune to it too. I will tell you, it's probably one of the hardest departments to hire for.
Tough job, but for us,
It is a very tough job, given the fact of what they're asked to do. And the training that they have to receive, the risk that they take with their personal liability, so to speak, whether it's just their physical harm, but also for the responsibility they have in their actions. Times have really changed for this department, and it is a tough department to hire.
The only other thing I'll continue to mention, I know we've talked in the past about some sort of a residential occupancy or uniform code enforcement process. I know you had a group together that was starting to look at that, but just wanted to check what the progress on that is, what we can do to help, and then B, from a budgetary perspective, I want to confirm what I believe to be true, which is that because it has both a revenue and expense side, it could be done through an amendment in the future rather than in having to finish it this month. Is that correct from a budget standpoint? And then can you give an update on where we're at?
Yeah, that is correct. We literally, right before COVID, we had all kind of had it all ready to go. Jimmy Lance, Eric, myself, Chris Brown at that point in time, you know, so we were all kind of pulled it all back out, dusted it off from, goodness, like 2013 or whenever it was that it first went through with, actually Julia was working on it, who works in the clerk's office now. So we pulled it all out. We have the previous legislation, but we also, I mean, you know, a couple of us were still here. We're here back then when that was introduced, and we know some of the concerns that landlords had, but as well as public had. So it's also exercising some of those and seeing how they pan out. I will tell you, there is a revenue and there is an expense, but there's also a very long process to ramp up to that as well too, because you have to do it in a phased process. Back when I was doing economic development, we were looking at other municipalities, large metropolitan municipalities, who literally, going back to what the Councilman McPherson was talking about, literally did it in a zone process, and it takes almost 2 years to get everybody up and inspected to get to where you have a full city, then you get on your 3-year cycle. So it's a slow ramp up, but then by the time you hit the 3rd year, then you're back to inspecting your next year again. So it's a lot of process. It is more staff. I will be honest with you, just like when we were talking about the sidewalk program, that is more staff. This is an initiative that needs more staff because the current workload that the current officers have and the current senior account clerk has would not be able to absorb this extra initiative as well as the inspections. So I think that we have to look with the current tenancy laws to make sure some of those changed. So we need to make sure that some of those things are also in play, just to make sure that they all are where they're supposed to be. Because again, the legislation we wrote was back in 2013, so it just needs to be refreshed probably, and then compared to some of the other municipalities that already have it. I think it's a great program. I think it'll help us a lot of ways to get into these buildings. You always hear us talk about quality living environments. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Taj Mahal, but it needs to be good, clean space for everybody to live in. And that's a route to be able to get us into those spaces a little bit more often.
Yeah. Well, good. Keep us in the loop as that moves forward again. And maybe we can have a workshop or something to discuss it in the next couple months.
Sure.
Anything else on code enforcement, or shall we move on to street maintenance on 122?
I'm good as long as you are.
Okay, street maintenance. Street maintenance department is basic functions are salting, tree removal, brush clearing, snow plowing, potholes, pretty much street beautification. To go into this, temporary salaries, we have increased. The idea there is to get some more laborers on the streets, excuse me, during the summer months and into the fall, probably ending around December 1st to help with potholes, street beautification, and basically leaf pickup during the fall months. The utility streetlights, that increases Siemens. One thing I do want to mention that we're trying this year that seemed to work, we're buying hot mix, we're storing it, cutting it up, putting it in the new hot box. It takes about 24 hours overnight. We're able to use the hot mix instead of cold patch this year. So that's one thing we're going to try to do to keep the durability of the hot mix into the pothole.
Throughout the year, you're saying, or just for a longer period?
I'm sorry?
Are you able to use the hot mix throughout the year, or just?
We're going to start off with about 20 ton to see 20 to 30 ton to see how long that could take us throughout the winter.
Okay, that's good news. Looking forward to seeing the results on that. But certainly, I know that's been an ongoing challenge. The speed at which the cold mix can jump right back out of those potholes. So
we have utilized 1 ton during that process right now to try it out, and it has worked. So.
I have to give a big shout out to Joe Martin. He actually found a YouTube video of how to do it, and he actually like came up with the idea of how to do it, where to store it, and just to try it. And I like that innovative thinking. That's what's going to help change the dial a little bit. So big kudos to him for at least trying to put a new idea out there.
Definitely. Man after my heart, watching municipal infrastructure YouTube videos at night. Okay.
There's also been an increase in the consultant services for tree removal. Obviously, with the storms that we've incurred this year, we've had trees come down, and obviously that's a liability to the city. So currently, right now, we have about 5 that are high priority that we need to get down. And obviously, you know that trees are not inexpensive to take down. So
I want to clarify something that was stated earlier, just to make sure that everybody's crystal. So the 409 lines throughout all the individual the departments, they're not necessarily all for the same vendors. So like the streets ones, like Chuck was just saying, the consultant service under this one is our tree vendor. The other consulting line under this one, if you look on page 123, that's for some of our lawn care vendors. So I know that it was stated earlier that there was a thought that there was one large vendor that was over multiple departments, and that's not necessarily the case. So I just wanted to make sure people understood the clarity that each department typically has its own consultants that are special to their department.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And on the trees in particular, I know there's some big projects going on around the ash tree. And I believe that's grant funded. And then the broader tree management program through the planning department. To what degree does that work into this tree budget versus other tree budgets?
So this isn't ash tree removal. This is just regular tree removal.
The ash tree removal.
In this year's budget.
The ash tree removal is run out of the special grants fund.
Okay. And then, are there also special grants funds for? I know we did the inventory. Does the streets department end up using that? I know that had some sort of medium-term priority maintenance, etc. Are they using that on an ongoing basis?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe Martin's got an iPad so that when they're out on the streets, they call in the address, and then he's able to check to see whether it's a city tree or whether it's a private tree. And then they can also look at the condition. If it's a tree that, say, 123 Ashland Place, and it turns out to be an ash tree, then he can alert Steve, make sure that there's what if it's in that plan or not. So it's actually been a really good savior for when we've gone through storms and stuff like that.
any tree that we take down, the planning department's notified.
Okay, so that data stays up to date on their end,
Yep.
and you're able to through this line, do you only manage trees that are emergencies, that are coming down, that are branches broken, etc.? Or are you able to do proactive stuff based on that broader management plan?
For the most part, it's emergency, but I mean, if the tree is dead, we need to take it down. And if it's a liability, it needs to come down. If the tree is not dead, but it poses a liability, it might come down at that point. But this is basically emergency and/or any liability to the city.
Understood.
Chair?
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Two questions. I think the utility lights, those are the LEDs, correct? On 401-0074?
Yes, those are the street lights.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, we're talking about the tree removal, and I'm talking about, and I've discussed it before, a lot of the trees that overhanging branches and so forth into street lights and whatnot. Is funding can be used for that out of this?
Yes.
Yes, but that's also one of the things that the street department is going to focus on again next year, is actually go down by zone and clear out overhanging branches that could be a liability and/or blocking signs or lights.
So if I have areas and whatnot that I've been asking about, just to have them checked and whatnot, because when I'm driving and I'm looking at, if we get any ice storm, some of these trees that are hanging over now, they could cause some issues. So we're not gonna do anything right now. We're waiting until the spring to do anything?
No, we're actually always doing that, but that is one of the programs that we're trying to focus on again next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. One of the other things about potholes that I have been hearing and looking at is the degree to which folks can do sort of proactive crack sealing that can prevent potholes from developing at all. What are the tactics there? Are there systems for folks to report that lower level stuff before it becomes a bigger pothole, or are there sweeps that your crew does to do that?
Yes, they can report it to the city, and our streets department does look at that, and that's one thing we're trying to do, especially now with the new hot box, and that we can possibly do this year round.
So one of the things too, as Chip and Aaron are working on the new paving process, is when they go and do evaluation of streets, and especially now that we have the new equipment at the streets department, because I believe that piece of equipment does have the sealing, the sealant component to it, the crack filler, is when they are able to, and the crews know the process to do it. This is actually the time of year, so like October is the time to do it, because it's not too hot and it's not too cold. So that would be one thing that we'll look at. The engineering department can do an assessment of the street. If we think we can get another year or two out of it just by doing some crack filling, or 3 years, then we'll have to work with the streets department and make sure they'll understand all of that. One of the other training components that they do is Cornell does the road school, where they do some training programs. That's one of the things in the engineering budget that we wanted to make sure that some of these crews were able to go do.
Yeah, certainly I would think anything we can do to fill cracks before the winter, that would help prevent them from turning into potholes over the winter. So that sounds good. Good to hear you have the equipment for that. It seems like it may be a thing that would be worth explicitly reaching out to the public on, to maybe have a form or a campaign for a month to get people to report any cracks in front of their houses, etc. So that we can do a targeted filling of those before water is able to get into there. If you don't have an existing process to scan for them. Similarly, in future tech, I've heard there are cities that have actually cameras on some of their like their garbage trucks or things like that are able to scan the roads and identify those cracks and create a punch list for you from there. So that's a thing to look into for the future. But for now, anything we can do to utilize the resource that is our residents, I'd encourage that. All right. That being said, any further discussion of street maintenance, or shall we move on to snow removal on 127?
For the record, it's gonna snow tonight.
Dusting.
Oh, yeah.
Dusting.
I don't know, any questions? The overtime went up, obviously depending on past,
You want the general services admin?
where am I?
5142.
7020.
No, 5142. Snow removal, correct?
Correct. Snow removal, 127, 128.
The overtime went up due to projections, and the salt also went up, quite honestly, because we need the salt.
Looks like salt's down a little bit.
Where am I?
You're
Oh, yes, gotcha. All right,
We have a new bid on the salt. Is that although
still waiting to.
we're awaiting another new bid. Is that true?
Chuck was using his notes that we're using the adjusted budget versus the actual budget you have in front of you.
That's fine. That being said, looks looks like salt budget is down a little bit, although I assume that's very weather dependent. It looks like prior year encumbrance was way higher. But is some of it also due to did we get a better price?
Yep. I don't know if the 21 bid is in yet for salt.
I don't think it's in.
It's variable. I mean, obviously, it's dependent on the conditions, right? You look at this year's winter, 19's winter was brutal. 18's was much better. So the thought was to somewhat middle it, given how variable both the overtime and the salt purchases can be. The plan is to purchase salt prior to the end of the year with the remaining balance to fill all the bins prior to year end, and then an ongoing evaluation throughout the year.
And the idea is to keep the bins full throughout the winter. Once we use it, fill it up.
That makes sense. Are we still replenishing the reserve? And what is the status?
The reserve has been fully replenished.
It has been fully replenished.
Correct.
Good to hear. Any further questions about snow removal?
Just make sure you get rid of it all.
Here,
All right.
I just want to say I hope they don't have
Shall
to
we
use
move
any of it.
On 129. Or did I? Councilman Gully?
I said, Chair, my statement is I hope they do not have to use any at all.
2020. Just remember.
Go global warming. Okay.
70/20 is
Sounds like might have a little bit. We can get, but we'll go on.
Where are you?
page 130.
Nasha's frozen. You got that?
All right, we're gonna go to the rec admin budget on page 130.
Thank you.
It's a very cheerful face.
The 70/20 is I like to compare it to 1490, where it's it's made up for the the oversight of both the departments 7110 and 7140. So the permanent salaries is for the supervisor of both 7110 and 7140. Office supplies were added because he needs office supplies and he's never had a line. So that was right size for that. Offset by decrease in postage, and then code 8s are all set based off of the formulas that we use. Very simple department when it comes to one person.
So we'll go to,
Hopefully I'm back, but if folks have any questions.
Where are we at?
Kevin, on page 133.
Parks.
Let's see here. Did you want to talk? We obviously have an increase, we're asking for an increase in temporary salaries. I don't know if you wanted to, is that what?
Positions in this department.
So that-
Youth services specialists in this
Did you want
department.
Yeah, so the prominent thing here is the increase in the temporary salaries just for the summer programming for the parks. This is the care and maintenance of the parks during the summer. But the biggest thing in this one is actually pretty much every other line stayed the same as far as budget items, except for if you look in the positions, we're actually proposing a brand new position in this budget. It's a youth services specialist. There's a couple people on the council know that we've been working on this. This is a position that is specific to programming and being a ally and a liaison to all of our youth partners out in the community. As you know, a lot of the youth programming and summer activities, summer youth programs have been running through my office. So this is a person who can take that ability on and be able to interact with the Boys and Girls Clubs, the CYO, Troy Central Little League, all of the groups, and hopefully be able to kind of help dispense the youth funding out of the Youth Bureau account as well too.
Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Deputy Mayor, and that youth service specialist, and I know you've given little information about it during different meetings, you mentioned it. So that person, is it a full-time position?
It is a full-time position.
And that person is going to be based out of where? Down out of the ice skating rink?
Most likely, yes.
Okay. And will that person be traveling from park to park throughout the city, you think? At times, in the summer at least?
Could. Yeah, absolutely, they could.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any discussion of, or did I miss, is there any budget for materials or programming or anything to support that position in their work?
So there's additional money allocated in the Youth Bureau that we'll probably be able to utilize that. I can talk about that once we get to there, about the funding that we put aside.
Great. Then shall we move on to Ice Rink, or are there any other further questions on the parks? Did we cover the capital plan related to the parks well enough the other night? Does anyone have any question on that in particular before we move on? I think we covered it quite a bit, and I know it's still under development, so we can continue those discussions as we move towards passage. But for now, we'll move on to the ice rink on page 136. Or rinks.
We have had a contractual increase in the permanent salaries, and for the most part, everything else has remained the same.
Any progress towards opening?
So that's part of the conversation. We've actually, through Councilman McPherson, we've had somebody introduced to us that's actually looking for a different use than an ice rink, but we've also had a hockey facility approach us about it as well too. It's certainly something that we can look at. We've been trying to determine, COVID obviously wasn't the right time to build it, and thank goodness we didn't build it this year and have it operating, because we would have lost our shirt. So I just think it's one of those things that we're gonna listen. We do need to get something back to the Knickerbocker Board Association soon on what the intent is for that ice rink. We do have plans. We do have the ability to go out and do it, but we just really want to make sure that it's the right fit for the next future use of that facility.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about what the staff is doing with their time in the meantime?
So the recreation attendant, that is the woman who is located at the rink itself, but she handles the bulk of any recreational calls that come in. And then the laborer is also one of the ones who helps maintain the Knickerbocker Park area.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, you said that there's somebody there during the day that answered phones at the ice rink itself?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Her name is Miss Abbott.
Very good.
Chair?
I did see revenue for
Anasha? Hello?
yes, sorry, one sec. I did see the where was that? Revenue for other recreation fees was down a little bit, but special events reimbursement was up a bunch in the budget.
Special event reimbursement is for overtime reimbursement for various events that go on throughout the city, and also reimbursement, for the film events that take place. There's just a general reimbursement for that. Other recreation fees were decreased just based off of the historical trend.
So both of those were basically historical trend changes, not structural or plan changes.
Correct. They were all based off of the 16, 17, 18, 19, and factoring in 20 as well.
Okay. Then Councilman Zalewski, you had a question on the on the ice rink?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm wondering why we have someone stationed at the rink if it's closed. In other words, if there's phone calls coming in there, why not just forward them somewhere else?
Because that's her office. And that's actually, the office at the ice rink is also where Kevin Graver, the supervisor, works out of as well.
Okay, so the rink, so the rink building technically then is not closed because of course there's people working in there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also been, I mean, there's people that rent the facility, I don't know how much we're renting it out right now. I can get an idea of that for you. But there's been people that have been renting it out periodically while it's been not an ice rink as well.
Board of Elections.
And like right now, the Board of Elections is using it for training.
Okay. Any further questions on the ice rink, or shall we move on to Youth Bureau on 144?
Are you ready?
Yep, go ahead with the youth services.
Okay, so youth services, you'll see a nice increase. As you know, this has been a long called for increase in a department, and we have to do it incrementally. We would love to add a tremendous amount to it, but we have to do it in a smart way because we only have as much staff as we have, right? So with the addition of the one. So the breakdown of youth services, just so everybody's aware, so it's almost $300,000, it's $299,000. I'll give you the breakdown of what is anticipated to be spent, okay? So we're looking at, everybody's familiar with the Volunteer Youth Recreational Opportunity something. It's called VROT, it's in the code. It's all of our sports, youth sports league. So this is Lansingburg Soccer, this is Troy Central Little League, this is Pop Warner. So there's 11 groups. This is the one, if you remember, some of your council members, last year we added a $1,000 dollar amount for Jeff Curry for his basketball program, so he could buy uniforms. So that's this grouping. So what we are proposing this year is actually to increase the funding for those youth groups by $500. So 11 groups will get $1,500. It is a reimbursement program. They have to submit receipts. Can be used for rent, electricity, equipment, uniforms. They just have to submit us, I think rent. I know it's utilities. Utilities, equipment and uniforms, and then they submit their receipts to us, and then we reimburse them their spending. But we would like to expand it from 11 to 11, keep the 11 groups, but give the 11 groups $1,500 apiece. They do have a formal committee group mechanism in place. They are required to meet so many times per year. Everybody has to attend, and then once they attend, then they can get their funding. So it's a way to pull all the groups together to make sure that they're all communicating themselves. We have
is there a defined process for groups to be added to that in the future if someone started something, or is that sort of an ad hoc process?
What we did last year when we did the additional funding for Jeff was I contacted the two guys who usually run it, who I have the most communication with. And then what they did was they invited them in to the group, and then they became a part of it. And they also had to realize their responsibility as to be able to attend and what it was used for.
Okay.
$150,000 of this money is the pool to operate the swimming pool in South Troy. We anticipate that that's going to be the cost. It was a little over $104,000 this year without doing a full audit on it. So we anticipate next year, because we got open a little bit later, that we would be about $150,000. There's also, typically we spend like anywhere from like $80,000 to about a little over $100,000 in third-party distributions for summer camps. So those are the 3 summer camps we would run back when we closed the pools, the youth programming that we ran through the 2 Boys and Girls Clubs and through the YMCA. And then it's also the after-school programming that we fund through the CYO, the Lansingburg Boys and Girls Club, and the Troy Boys and Girls Club. What we've done was we've taken that, which typically spends anywhere from $80,000 to $105,000 a year, and we actually increased that this year to be able to help support some additional agencies and groups that have additional after-school programming or summer youth programming to $132,500. We're hoping that this while we love our CYOs and the Boys and Girls Clubs and the Y, we also know that there's a lot of organizations out there that are doing just as amazing things as those, but they're a little bit smaller grassroots efforts. So we want to make sure we support them. So we increased that potential funding to $132,500. That money can also be helped to help seed some of the programs that we might want to do on an internal basis through that youth services provider as well.
Great. So you said about 16K for youth recreation opportunity, 150K, and then for swimming pool, 130K for summer camps and after school. Is there more, or is that?
That's $299.
That adds up. Very good.
Yeah. $16,500 for the sports, $150 for swimming, and then $132,500 for the youth.
Okay. Any further questions
Chair, I
on
got
youth
one or
services?
two.
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Deputy Mayor, on the swimming pool, is that going to be, are you looking at the Boys and Girls Club running that again next year? Or is it- Sorry?
Absolutely. It was superb.
So let me ask you, we were only open for a couple weeks here. How much money was it for the few weeks that they were opened for their,
So from the 4th of July weekend through, well, just after the 4th of July weekend, through the end of August, I think they closed on August 28th, it was a little over $104,000.
and we had money set aside for that last year, didn't we?
Yes, it was in this department.
Yeah, I don't have the budget. I didn't know what it was for last year. That's why I was looking at it.
Well, if you look on that page 145, you'll see the current budget says 243. It was a part of that number.
It was part of the 243. Okay, so that was 104. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any further questions on the recreation in particular, sorry, on the youth services in particular? And then I believe that is all of our budget lines, unless anyone notices I missed anything. I suppose if anyone has any questions about either the revenue lines or the capital plan lines, now would be the time. But otherwise, I'll open it up for any closing comments, and if not, a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Okay, and a second.
Second,
All in favor?
all of us.
Aye. Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good
All
night,
right,
everybody.
everybody go vote on Tuesday, and then we'll see you on Thursday for another general services meeting at 6 PM. Talk about
Indeed,
sanitation.
that one will be
All
good.
right,
We'll
thank you for
look
sending
at
that to
the
me.
sanitation plan.